Even like copies of Dr. Briggs,
I printed you one up here to make sure you had a copy of everything that was said.
blue tape, what he has in mind, so just pictures. So he does have to order a few things, but siren and controller has in anticipation. I told him, and so he ordered that. They specifically make like a profile strong siren setup.
Oh, yeah. Is it just, it goes to that, yeah. Okay, we'll add it.
Okay, it's okay.
I told him
That way it's easier to access.
probably order 2 of everything because I got that can. It's gonna need something to get in there too. So I'm curious to see how that looks. I am tuned up and ready to go.
For me, it's fallen a mud puddle.
Wait, Yvonne, are you ready?
I am, sir.
Everybody turn your lights on.
Recording in progress.
Okay. All right, it is 7:02. I'm gonna go ahead and start the meeting. I don't have an agenda in my binder, but I kind of remember how it goes. Yvonne, can you call roll?
Yes. George.
Here.
Aka. Buckles.
Present.
McElroy.
Here.
Hebert. Here. Hodgins. Here. Houston.
All right. Let's stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so as far as any additions or deletions, I am going to move the new business, the discussion and vote for the FEMA pre-implementation. I'm going to move that to a presentation, so they will go after Sheriff Elliot.
L1. Yep, L1 becomes F2, is that right?
Yes. I believe that's the only change. Is that all right? Okay. Okay. So we'll go on to public comment period. I'll go ahead and read this. First public comment portion of the agenda is the opportunity for the council to listen to the public, not the dialogue. Public is allowed up to 3 minutes to present information relevant to the city. Topic issue brought up may be referred by the council to the city manager for inclusion on a subsequent council agenda. Council has the discretion to ask questions after comments are concluded. Please note, complaints should first be addressed to the appropriate city department and or the city manager prior to directly addressing council. Okay, so first we have Barb and Jeff Leiston.
Hi, good evening.
You can come up here.
No worries. I was concerned upon reading that Sheridan City Council was considering the removal of fluoride from the water. And I did a small bit of research at the time, and I also contacted our dentist, Dr. Michelle Aldrich, from the Salem River Bend Dental Clinic. And she was very prompt in responding to me. I was asking her opinion as a dentist, and She said, "Thank you for asking my opinion on community water fluoridation. I am a huge proponent of fluoridation. It is one of the few ways we can get passive protection from decay for everyone in our community, whether poor or rich, young or old." She also sent a link, which I have given to Kale, of the ebook, the lengthy ebook from the American Dental Association regarding risks versus benefits. And I trust the council is very aware, I would think, of this book from the American Dental Association. And I just want you to know that Jeff and I personally are opposed to removal of fluoridation. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right, next we have Tara Summers.
Mayor, Tara had a handout that she wanted to have passed around. Do you want me to go ahead and pass that around now? Okay, want me to pass it down?
Hi again. It's me, Tara Summers, 635 Northeast Hill Street. I'm here to report violations, code 15.16.050, dangerous buildings. And I looked it up, title 9, chapter 9.16.010, injury to or removal of property, sections A and B. It's all in the pack. Councilwoman Lucy Hebert is the reference to this. The barn that's encroaching on my property and unauthorized authorizations and destruction of city property. I provided photos of the barn and am now including documentation and historical photos that demonstrate the damages caused to the city property that have led to the drainage issues that are damaging my property. These issues have been previously reported to code enforcement with no response. I was recently told code enforcement officer wasn't even allowed to talk to me, that I had to talk to the attorney. I tried that. That didn't work either. I didn't get a response. I'm guessing it has something to do with never following up on the conditions of the partition in the first place, but I got a council member and the mayor both at my home to view the deterioration. Both have agreed that it's a violation. Mayor George did say that he had heard that it was scheduled for removal in January. Unfortunately, that's not confirmed, nor is it timely. The likely outcome will be the barn's collapse, causing the destruction of my property. I've been struggling to get someone to help me resolve these concerns. Unfortunately, I keep hearing from council and the mayor that they don't know what they can do to help with the problem. So I found out. Sheridan is a council manager form of government. Essentially, you guys need more money, by the way. The council members are the leaders and policymakers of the community. Council is a legislative body. Its members are the community's decision makers. The city manager is appointed by the council to carry out policy and ensure that the entire community is being served. City manager is bound by whatever action the council takes. Essentially, city council are the ultimate decision makers. So, I'm asking you, what are the next steps? Will the council make a decision as to whether or not the city will uphold their own written ordinances? And follow up on my report. I'd also like to remind everyone that Councilwoman Hebert should not be part of that discussion. And I do have a packet included. I'm just wanting to upfront say that the weather is coming.
Good.
And it wasn't until the fall of 2020 when Lucy chose to modify the natural drainage on city property that there became a problem. The drainage prior to her alterations was adequate for the 3 hillsides. She chose to clear a path on city property and fill in all the natural catch basins and ditches for her own purpose. In the end, 2 large pipes were installed underground from the city property under her 25-foot right of way to end up trespassing on my property by 11 feet without any permission or even asking if that was okay. All so that it could divert away from her property. There are photos, the photos show what the landscaping looked like in 2012, 2016, I believe, and then in 2021. There's just, it's been a lot. I've been trying, and I'm just trying to let you know that it's gonna get worse and worse as the rain comes. Thank you. I don't have questions, I'm not allowed, but if you do, I'm happy to answer.
I was gonna let you know, I can give you, a call, we actually, discussed some of this today, so I can give you an update.
Fantastic.
If you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I just had 2 cards, so I think.
You've got one more.
Oh, I do, okay.
Hello, my name's Denise Kinney. I go by Hattie, some people, and I want to address what Ian Houston said about the American Legion. I am a widow's wife, a widow of the soldier, and he said that we don't get funding. And if we do get funding, we don't get any funding at all. And so when you come around to that grant, it got denied, but I believe it was only because they couldn't find the letter. And, but I want you to know that we do not get funding, and what we do is provide meals for the unfortunate to come in every Tuesday and Thursday, and I am a volunteer for that. And we have hot soup or whatever, or we get pre-made meals from the tribe, from the elders out there, and so that's what we serve. And we'll heat that up and we'll serve that, and it's all free. It's just whoever is hungry can come in and eat. And everything that we get is donated, like from the food bank, we'll get bread, if they have it. They haven't had it for the last few weeks, because Fran's Bakery had something wrong. But, yeah, so I wanted to just let you know that we do not get any funding. Our building is getting dilapidated, it needs to be repaired, and we need funding if we could get it. Because we do, like I said, we donate everything. We could feed if any of you walked in, you would get fed. It doesn't matter who you are. But anyways, I just want to say my piece on that and let you go, just bring to light, let you know where we stand and that we don't get any funding at all. We do it all ourselves. So, and the only immunity that we do get is like from bingo. When we hold bingo, the auxiliary gets the money, and I am a member of the auxiliary. And being a widow of a serviceman, I really, what am I trying to say? I really would like the support from you guys, if you would please, because it is a city or a town thing.
Denise, do you recall what the last community grant was for the American Legion? I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry.
I think you guys were giving out $2,400 or something like that, and it got denied.
Normally, we only give out 500 for certain projects, but what was that project for?
We need to do some repair work on the building itself, because it leaks, the roof is leaking and everything. So, yeah, we need to do some things it's not for our program, or what we do, by no means. It's not for the lunches or anything like that. It's just for repair work on the building.
Well, I'm not sure about the 2,400, but I can try and get you the 500. Not city money. I'll give you some.
Okay.
Probably not the full amount, but I'll give you some to help out.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
We would appreciate it.
Of course.
And I'm sorry, Denise, did you say that you did, because when I talked to you, did you just say that they did submit a letter?
Well, yeah, but Heidi couldn't find it.
No, it got to them. It was a different one that we couldn't find.
submit a letter with their requests?
Well, she did, it was a written one, I think she said it was a written one.
I don't know.
Well, I'll get you some.
Okay.
All right, Ian.
You don't receive any funding for the food?
No, none, zero. We get all of our food from just donations, like from the food bank. But, excuse me, whatever they have left over, they will bring it over. Some people the other day came over and when they get food from the food bank, if they don't use, the canned goods or something, they bring it and they donate that, which is a lot of tomato sauce and tomatoes and stuff we could use. So,
Please forgive me for misspeaking the other night. That's my fault, and I was misinformed. And I hope that you will forgive me for saying that, and I hope the council will forgive me for saying that. I should have been better informed apparently, so.
well, thank you for the apology.
Yes,
So, yeah, I am doing this all for my husband.
yeah, if you need help with your roof, I have tar, and I can get up there for you.
Yeah,
Why
it's
don't you give me
okay.
give you my number?
I'll have, the commander call you
Okay, thank you.
and she can discuss that with you. The roof is, it's leaking so bad that it's coming through the interior part of the roof.
Okay.
So that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, Denise.
All right. Thank you, happy Thanksgiving as well. And, no, that's not mine, and that's not mine, this is mine.
Drive safe.
I wanted to ask the sheriff something too. I got this light back here that I used on the back. I have one that would be more, clearly, but I don't think I'm allowed to use it. I'll show it to you.
You can get a pass on that.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice, and it would make me more visible. Yes, please. I just wanted to make sure that I wouldn't get on the headrest.
Sheriff says it's okay.
Right? And you all heard him.
If anybody pulls over on your way home, you know why.
And your name?
Sam.
Okay, I'll send Sheriff Sam, told me I could.
Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
that's much better, Denise.
Yeah, I can see you now.
Yep, I can see
I
it.
can see it recording too.
All right, Sheriff Elliot, you're up. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a couple extras if anybody wants to follow along. Well, good evening. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes to come out and address you all tonight. So I am making a commitment to get around to all 5 of the cities that we serve here in the county to give you an update, both just in general, but also a look back at the last fiscal year. So this is a report that's going to cover the entirety of the period from July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2024. So this would be the last fiscal year, which we're obviously now several months into the new fiscal year. So you all should have a packet that you can take a look at and follow through as I just give you kind of an update. So it's important to me to make sure that you guys understand what the sheriff's office is providing to you for a service, that you understand what it is that you're paying for. So I've told, you're the second city that I have spoken with and given an annual report. And I understand that these contracts with the sheriff's office are very expensive contracts. And I recognize that tough decisions are made every year during the budget process. And so I do feel that it's important for you to know what service we do provide and what is going on with the sheriff's office. So we'll launch into this, and then any questions you have at the end. I want to be respectful of your time. So behind the face page, you'll see that there's just kind of a look back with the history of the city of Sheridan. So we have all the way back to 1989. You can see kind of a year range there from 89 to 98 of what the city population was and what the staffing level looked like for the contract with the sheriff's office. And then you have 2018 to 2024. So obviously a lot of population growth since 1990. And you can see that our staffing level with that contract has reduced over that period of time. At the very bottom, you can see just kind of a calls for service snapshot, 1,649 calls in 1999, 4,467 calls last year. So significant increase in the amount of calls and activity out here. The next page is just a little bit more of the same, looking at the last 4 fiscal years. You can see the trends. Interestingly, I think a lot of folks thought that COVID really affected law enforcement, but you can see that our call volume in the city of Sheridan increased during COVID. A lot more folks were home. It just did not translate into the same thing for us that it translated into for a lot of private industry when you talk about activity level. And you can see the number of cases that were taken. Those are incident reports where something was actually documented, and then the number of cases that ended in arrest. So overall call activity is up, but arrests are down. The next page is kind of a pie chart that shows what things look like with respect to who is responding to the calls in the city of Sheridan. It's been no secret. I've met with Manager Bell a couple of times over the last year that we have faced some staffing issues within the sheriff's office. But we have continued to provide 24/7 service and call response in the city of Sheridan, even when we had periods of time where we didn't have a person that was filling one of your dedicated spots. We were backfilling that utilizing the West Valley Rural Patrol Deputy. And that's what's borne out in this graph. You can see that 28% of all of the calls in the city were handled by deputies that are assigned specifically to the city, and 70% were handled by Rural Patrol. That's a little bit of a double-edged thing for me with the sheriff's office, because I start getting questions about where is the West Deputy that's supposed to be up Rock Creek and up Willamina Creek and out in the rural parts of the county when they're spending a significant amount of time in the city of Sheridan covering calls. And this is not unique to Sheridan. I gave a report to Lafayette last week, and over 50% of the calls in Lafayette, they have a rural deputy, which is my North End deputy, that is coming in to handle calls there because they only have 2 positions in their contract. The calls don't really care what the schedule is or how many people is that. The next page shows your top 20 calls for service type. And I don't know if it would be surprising to anybody to see that traffic stops are still the #1 call type down here in the city. Over the last year, we have done a number of directed enforcement efforts, from crosswalk enforcement to speed enforcement and distracted driving and seatbelt. And so when we get grants from the Oregon Department of Transportation to focus on specific problem driving behaviors, myself and Captain Whitlow have really directed staff to make sure that they are spending an appropriate amount of time in the cities themselves, that we're capitalizing on the opportunity for additional traffic enforcement in the 5 cities that we serve. And so there have been a number of details down here in Sheridan over the last year where we brought in staff that are on overtime. They're not necessarily your deputies that are assigned to work in Sheridan, but they're deputies with the sheriff's office that are working traffic grant, and they'll come in and work distracted driving or seatbelt specific enforcement, particularly around the high school, based on the number of complaints that we get about speed on Bridge Street. We have had the radar trailer down here, so I think that is some of what you're seeing reflected is that we have been completed in our efforts to have some of that special emphasis traffic enforcement going on in the cities. The next chart is really the same information, the top 20 call types, but it's reflected as a percentage of all of the calls. And so, sometimes we get some questions about, what is an agency assist or what is an extra patrol? What does that look like in the community? And without going too far down some rabbit trails, those are typically responding to either specific reports or requests from people in the community, or it's case follow-up where there's something that has transpired in the city and the deputies are going and following up on those incidents and doing additional interviews or potential witness contacts or trying to canvass for video surveillance. So if you have any questions about what any particular call type is or how it's reflected, I'd be happy to answer as best I can. Yes.
If someone does have a complaint, are they supposed to just call Wycombe?
Correct. Sometimes when deputies, if they start an investigation and it's something that's going to take a while, they will pass along their cell phone number or their email address and they'll communicate directly with the deputy that is responsible for that investigation. But anything where somebody in the community needs to talk to a deputy, always encourage them to just call Wycombe because that's going to get dispatched to somebody that's on duty right now. And even if all they do is say, well, I see that Deputy Grant is assigned to this case and he'll be back to work tomorrow and he'll get in contact with you, at least there's that communication.
I had a question real quick.
Yeah.
I believe I asked Officer Grant about this, but when it says DHS, that's if an officer is assisting with a DHS situation, is that?
Yes and no. So we get cross reports that come in from DHS directly to our main office, and every single one of those cross reports that comes in gets reviewed by our detectives division. And so those are not, if there's something that needs to happen as far as somebody to go physically knock on the door, talk to the people in the home, do some follow-up and figure out if there's problematic issues there, the detective supervisor will typically assign it to one of your deputies here in the city. But every single one of those that comes in is getting screened and reviewed by our detectives division to see whether or not it merits additional work.
And then what is civil paper like? What can that fall to?
Civil paper could be serving a subpoena, serving an eviction, serving divorce papers, restraining order, anything that's a communication from the courts out to the citizens. The next one, always kind of interesting to me to see the distribution of when calls are happening. And so you can see that for the most part, it's kind of an even distribution, which means that, we take these data points into consideration when we're talking about how to set up scheduling. And obviously your contract with us is a 3-position contract. So we're trying to maximize the amount of hours in a week that those 3 positions are going to cover with respect to what days of the week typically are the busiest. So just because a particular day of the week shows a certain call type, obviously we know during the summertime that may not be the same as in the school season when the schools are in session. The schools can be a big driver of calls, especially during the daytime hours. So there's a lot of consideration that goes into how do we schedule and how do we assign staff to meet the needs of the city and try to get the most that we can out of the hours that they have here. The next bar graph shows all cases by UCR type. So this kind of is similar to what you would get in your monthly reports. You'll see the types of cases that are happening. So this is just an annual snapshot of those. Yes, sir.
What's the UCR?
It it's a uniform crime report. So it's the code or the specific offense type that the FBI uses to categorize crime reports across all jurisdictions in the country. So if we report that we had a larceny, that's the equivalent of the same thing in Florida.
Thank you very much.
You bet. The next slide shows case status. So that's just showing how cases are being resolved here in the city. Whether, it's cleared in some manner, or whether it is closed, or whether there's an arrest made. So obviously you can see that the highest ratio or the highest portion of the cases are closed by administrative closure, which means that either a potential victim did not want to pursue a charge against somebody. It could be that there actually wasn't a crime that occurred. It could be just an information report. But the next highest, and pretty close behind, is arrest. So, a significant number of the cases that are happening out here are being solved and closed by arrest. The next slide is the pie chart that shows how traffic stops are resolved. And this is always kind of a loaded slide, because there's folks that think that the ratios should be inverse or different, or we should issue more warnings than citations. But it's pretty well established that warnings, for the most part, do not change behavior. There's been a lot of studies, and you'll hear me if you follow our social media at the sheriff's office, and you hear me speak in public. Yamhill County has a tremendous problem with poor driving, in particular impaired driving. We have a very high number of impaired drivers in the county. We have a significantly high number of serious injury and fatal crashes in the county, and we are really trying to be diligent about changing some of the driving behaviors that we see in the county, because year in and year out, significant crashes are the leading cause of fatalities in the county for folks. When you're taking like medical and some of those natural type causes out of the mix. So the reason why you see probably a higher ratio of citation issued to warning is I have been pretty direct with my staff that we have to try to change some of the behavior. I mean, if you drive back and forth 18 between Mac and Sheridan on any sort of a regular basis, you can be cruising along at 61. People are blowing your doors off in the double yellow no passing zone. And so, we see that throughout the county. It's not unique to Sheridan. And then the last slide here is a comparable, and the reason I added this one in is actually it was a request by the city of Lafayette to look at where things are at. And obviously you can get onto YouTube or whatever and watch that council meeting from last week. But I told the city of Lafayette that they do need to start planning. They just have added that huge development off of the north part of Bridge Street and added a significant number of homes. And you can see that if you compare the city of Sheridan to the city of Lafayette for total population, the city of Sheridan obviously is larger. And you have 3 positions, and the city of Lafayette is they're coming along right behind you when it comes to the call volume and the population there, and they're only at 2 positions. And so I'm just trying to be upfront and say that there's an increasing demand for service from the sheriff's office in particular these 2 cities, Lafayette and Sheridan, because of the amount of growth that has already happened and the amount of growth that is projected to happen. Obviously, you guys have the big development off of Iola that's going to be going in. And so, I wanted to take the opportunity to let you know that given the trajectory that we've seen over the life of the time that we've been providing service and the increase in call volume, I don't anticipate that slowing down. And I need to just bring to your attention that I do think, as the mayor mentioned in the address over at the high school at your open house, that we've started some preliminary discussions about what would it look like to increase the staffing for the contract for the city of Sheridan, recognizing that that is very expensive, but also going to be very necessary, given how busy the city of Sheridan is and will continue to be. Obviously, again, you guys are the largest of the cities that we serve. Your contract is the biggest, but I also needed to just take the opportunity to kind of put that back on your radar and say, as we head into the next year of budget planning and budget prep, I should be able to have you numbers very early on in the budget season that you can look at. We did just settle the collective bargaining agreement with the union that represent the deputies. So we will have forecasting for the next 3 years to look at costings. So we are open to discussions about how we can provide better service and also better staffing moving forward. So, any questions from me? Yes.
Just you're including the prison population with the.
We do, because it's included in the census. And, I think that it's always kind of a caveat. People say, well, it includes the prison population, and it does. But you also have to factor in that means that you see more visitation, you see people coming into town because of that. You have employment, they're doing heavy recruiting at FCI, trying to get more staffing, which means, potentially more folks move into the community. So it's not a direct correlation, but there is some correlation to the prison population and the demands on the city.
I'm glad to hear that we'll have numbers early on, but I want to try and look at every option we have to try and get to 4. Okay, any other questions for Sheriff? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much. And I don't have the monthly. I don't know if you guys are going to be looking at the monthly while I'm here, but I can wing it off of whatever manager Mel hands me.
So it starts on page 53 of the book.
So this is the month of October. You'll see the current year plus the prior year. And these are, that first page, I think she said 53. That is that UCR report that we talked about earlier, the uniform crime report. So that's what gets reported for crime stats to the FBI. And then pages 55 through 81 is your monthly report showing all of the call types, the generic locations with the house numbers redacted of where calls were at and what the specific call type was. So I actually have Captain Whitlow is the one that kind of distributes and coordinates these, but it looks like you have 401, which is actually pretty high in contrast to when I was involved in looking at these reports every month. So it's 400 calls for service in a month for 3 people. That's a pretty significant workload. Questions about your monthlies here? What we report to you guys? Anything that you would like to see?
Yeah, I'm not sure if, I appreciate having the prior year detail from October 23, but we probably don't need to see it just because it's like, it's a good comparison on page 55 or 53 because it's good to see that way, but we kind of discussed it, it's kind of like, well, those already happened last year, and it's, but it's good to have the summary to compare 24 and 23, but I think the in detail list of 23 we probably don't need.
So the annual report, then, you know, if you did that once a year, to just see the trends up or down over the prior year is sufficient for you. Yeah.
Okay, Rocky.
You just said something about 400 calls during the month of October.
Mhm.
Where does that number come from?
So on the very last page,
The council packet, I think it's page 68.
and I got mixed up here. Page 81. Well, at least on these page numbers. Page 81 of 278.
That would be October 23.
Oh, yeah. Incidents.
Oh, okay, so if you're, let me get to the end of 24.
Right, I actually had more than October 23, 2406.
Okay. Yep, there it is. That's on page 68, so, yeah. At least I wasn't that far off.
Because I have this.
406 divided by
The,
31.
the number next to it, 59, is that the number of the different officers, or what does that number mean?
That is the number that resulted in a case report being taken.
Oh, okay.
So. 59 case numbers.
Oh, okay. Okay. Any other questions? Right. Yeah, thank you for coming.
That,
The sheriff and the captain have been really great to work with, but they've also been really wonderful giving us the opportunity to have Lieutenant Stack come down here to make that fill in too. So not only does he have rural patrol, but he also is doing that. So I'm very thankful.
absolutely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we have, yes, the FEMA pre-implementation compliance measures. Is Liam on here? Yeah, there he is. Yeah.
Hey, everybody. Howdy, council. I can't quite see all of you at once, so I'm looking off into space. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna try and keep this. I'm gonna try and keep this pretty quick today. So I know the planning stuff can sometimes be long. We have a busy agenda, and this is kind of complicated and not fun. And we don't have a lot of options. So some of you may or may not be familiar already with the primary preliminary implementation compliance measures, with the BIOP, the biological opinion, and the ESA consultation. I'm going to be throwing around a lot of acronym soup because we're dealing with FEMA and they like their acronyms. So I provided council with a memo. I hope you had time to read that. If you didn't read the attachments, that's okay. There's a lot. And a lot of that information is actually still preliminary. So, quick history. Process of consultation with the Endangered Species Act for FEMA in the state of Oregon has been going, I think, since 2009 was when this got started. There was a biological opinion issued in 2016. That's sort of the first document in a consultation that tells you what's going to happen with your rules. And what this is that each federal agency has to make sure that every time they're approving something or working with something, that they're in coordination with the Endangered Species Act. And so, because FEMA regulates our land use, they need to make sure that they comply with that as well. So 2016 is when we get the biological opinion that says, hey, you are the jurisdictions, you are the areas that can impact endangered species. We need certain rules and protections. Here are some suggestions on things that make sense to protect endangered species in these parts of Oregon. And the vast majority of communities in Oregon are in this area, and we are too. So after getting the BIOP, FEMA, the biological opinions document, right? FEMA begins rulemaking. They begin processing, hey, what's this gonna look like? What rules are we gonna add to communities in Oregon to comply with this BIOP? And that's really where we are. We're still in this process where FEMA is still making rules. They don't have draft rules. They don't have a direction quite yet. And they've been at this game for almost 10 years now since getting the BIOP, right? Because they were taking so long, they were prompted by exterior groups to issue some preliminary implementation compliance measures, or PICMs. So the real rules will be done eventually. They're targeting 2025 with implementation of the real rules in 2027. But in the interim, FEMA has introduced new rules for communities in Oregon that will they may be stricter, but they will meet the future standards of the future rules. So these may be stricter than the future rules, we don't know. They may be identical to the future rules, we don't know. But FEMA has basically issued to every city in Oregon, every local jurisdiction, not everyone. There's a couple in Eastern Oregon who don't have to do it. But the vast majority of local jurisdictions in Oregon, you need to do one of these things to comply with the rules that aren't quite out yet. So it really is a little weird to wrap your head around. This is sort of a foretaste of what's to come. FEMA sent out a letter to local jurisdictions in July. Because their contacts were a little old, they started this process back in 2009 and issued the buyout in 2016. Not every jurisdiction got the letter, but the word got out and the notices were made, and they've held some meetings since then to kind of inform us about what these things mean. So really, there are 3 possible preliminary implementation compliance measures, or PICMs. If you call them PICMs, you get to pick one. The 3 are either 1, you can say, hey, until we have the new rules, no one builds in the floodplain period. We as a municipality are going to ban development in the special flood hazard area. So that means the entirety of the regulatory 100-year floodplain, and including the floodway. Now that's the 3rd implementation compliance measure. The other 2 are sort of those future tastes of what those rules are going to look like. The first option is to adopt a FEMA model code. We already have a pretty recent FEMA model code. Many of you on council are going to remember going through that with Jim Jacks and getting our code up to standard. Because of that, this model code option is just adding some more things on the end of our existing floodplain code. Or we can allow each applicant to go through a permit by permit evaluation process. So every single time someone submits a permit, they would hire a wildlife biologist. We can make a determination on who we believe is qualified to do that, and they would prepare a permit demonstrating that there is no net loss. The same no net loss standard would be achieved by the model code update. No net loss is a new definition in Oregon. We don't really use this language when it comes to land use. And what that means is specifically that there will be no possible impact to habitat by a development. This doesn't mean that there's no allowed mitigation. Some people may be familiar with a standard that prevents mitigation that actually exists in Washington in a similar FEMA consultation area. No net loss means you can mitigate away the damage to an ecosystem that you cause, but you have to make sure that it comes back to neutral or 0. So we have these 3 PICMs, right? We've got 1 that's pretty unreasonable, 2 that are kind of reasonable, but they're functionally the same. And what FEMA has done over the last few months is they sort of issued more and more trainings and opportunities for land use planners and for staff to learn more about how this implementation would take place. We were all kind of confused at the beginning as a group, right, collectively, because there wasn't a lot of information available, just some draft rules, nothing finalized. I want to tell the council, what we were able to include in the packet is still draft rules, right? These are drafts of a draft. So these things may change in the near future. It's a little bit frustrating. One of the reasons we've waited till November, when this process began in like late July, when these letters went out, is because we've gotten new information. Every single month, there's something new that we learn, or some interpretation of these standards changes, and we have to make a decision about what path forward the city wants to take. So what FEMA has given us are 2 different deadlines. The December 1 deadline, which is they say, hey, this is when our rules are going to take effect, and this is when you as a community need to have made a decision about which pathway you're going to take. Then there is the July of 2025 deadline, which says, okay, you as a community have decided which pathway you're going to take. By July of 2025, that pathway has to be enshrined in your code. Now, no matter what you do, right, even if we say, hey, we want to do a code amendment, we want to enshrine this in our code, we have a lot of people who apply for things in the floodplain, so it makes more sense, whatever choice the council makes. If we don't get that enshrined in our code by December 1, which is possible, we would default to requesting this permit by permit process. And I'm really avoiding at this early stage talking about the differences between those two processes because FEMA has talked about how functionally they believe them to be the same, right? So we've got a permit by permit process, a code process, and council needs to make a decision relatively soon, or the city. FEMA hasn't been clear about who needs to make a decision, just a decision needs to be made about which way we want to move forward. So that's why we prepared this memo tonight, and that's why we're having this conversation. So that's the history, that's what we need to do. Now I want to talk a little bit about our options. You're going to see these huge documents that are attached to the council packet. Again, I don't expect you to have read them all. It's quite a bit, and it's quite boring. But these are sort of FEMA's drafts of what each of these options look like, right? The permit by permit option or the code amendment option. Both functionally do the same things, right? The permit by permit option just is maybe more for communities who don't have as many applicants and don't want to enshrine certain things in their code. That would require someone to hire someone to prepare an analysis. That analysis would use the guidance provided by FEMA to determine if, hey, this development results in no net loss. Theoretically, a permit by permit approach could be more flexible, except for FEMA has put in these, their sort of safe harbor standards for what no net loss of habitat are, right? No net loss of habitat is preserving three things: 3-dimensional space above the floodplain, 2-dimensional space of impervious surface, right? And preserving the number of trees on site. Those are in the permit by permit thing. And basically someone who does a permit by permit approach will have to do those standards. If you adopt the model code, you adopt the exact same standards at the end of your model code. Here are 3 things that every development needs to mitigate for, except they're adopted into your code instead of being, we adopt by reference this FEMA document, go prepare an analysis in line with that document. So you actually end up adopting the same standards. FEMA has identified that they don't really view flexibility between the two paths. So the model code process is a little simpler. Instead of having someone prepare a special permit or special analyses, we just have these development standards, and every time we apply our regular floodplain development permit standard, we're looking for those 3 things to be preserved or mitigated, right? 2-dimensional impervious area. You can't have more concrete, you can't have more gravel than already exists. If you do, you have to mitigate. 3-dimensional space above the floodplain. You can't build 3-dimensional space and take away flood storage capacity. And mature trees. If you tear down mature trees, you have to replace them with mature trees. All of these things can be mitigated, but those are the 3 standards. There's 2 ways that the standards are modified. The first is if you're really close to the river, if you're really close to the high water mark, within 170 feet, they call that the RBZ. That means that the amount of mitigation you have to do to build in that area is increased. And the second modification is if you can't mitigate on site, you are allowed to mitigate on a different property. I'm a property owner and I want to develop, and my neighbor's a property owner and they don't want to develop. I can use their property for my habitat mitigation, but the further away it is, if it's not on the same reach of the river, which is a thing we'll have to figure out how we define, the same reach of the river, then the mitigation value increases. You have to mitigate twice as much. So basically, if you mitigate locally, you have to mitigate at a lower ratio than you do if you mitigate at a distance. No matter which pathway we choose, whether we go with a model code or whether we go permit by permit, we're adopting all of these things. And of course, before we adopt anything into our code, you guys are going to get a full staff report and hearing talking about this. This isn't, hey, we make a decision today, we're locked in on track. This is just, staff want to know, what is the path forward? Do you want us to go for this permit by permit approach? Do you want us to go for this model code approach? Do you have questions about this process? And I hope I summed that up quickly, because this has been, again, over 10 years of work from FEMA. Trying to sum it up in 15, 20 minutes is a little tricky. So I'm sure there's still a lot of questions. I'll open it up to questions for the council. And then if you could give some direction to staff after that about which path we're going to, we would notify FEMA and create our record.
Wait.
Sorry.
You're good. Roxy, go ahead.
This was a lot, to be the model, it is less flexible. And more cities will use that model because they have maybe fewer areas that are in a floodplain. We have a lot of area in a floodplain. We need, we need to be as flexible probably as we can so that we can go by case by case. There's no one model that's gonna fit it all. And when you talked about some stuff I can't even remember now, I think we need to be more flexible.
So, Commissioner Aka, what I can say is that if you look at FEMA's habitat mitigation guide, that is the model that they provided for how the permit by permit will work. While there may be marginally more flexibility than doing a code amendment, they still include those exact same standards that are included in the model code and say, hey, if someone prepares something, they have to meet these standards. So if we adopt the model code, we adopt the standards. If we go permit by permit, we adopt the standards and we make it potentially more confusing and expensive for applicants. Now you are correct, there would be a marginal amount more, but the same flexibility exists through the floodplain development permit process. The more we learn from FEMA, they even admitted that the reason they put the, and this was in a training that I was in, they mentioned, hey, we thought that the permit by permit process would be easier for cities to adopt because they didn't understand how land use processes work in Oregon. They're so used to working in other states with maybe a faster land use process than the state of Oregon has. So they assumed that cities could just have a council meeting, adopt this into their code and be done and not have to worry about doing a big code amendment. But no matter what, we have to have multiple hearings and do our PAPA notice and all that groovy stuff. So it isn't a faster route. So FEMA sees them as the same end goals, but they thought that the permit by permit would be a faster route. We can always adopt the model code and add one or two lines to our code that say, or you could have a certified wetland biologist or whoever we deem appropriate. FEMA's given some advice as to how to write that language, could prepare this document instead. But they would both adopt the same standards, right? FEMA has the same standards in both documents. So while I hear you, your need for flexibility, and I agree, what we're getting from FEMA is that these were really supposed to be two roads to the same garden, not different view sheds, if that makes sense.
Partly, but you talked about mitigation, things like even placement of soil, gravel, stone, rock, or other materials that change the elevation are considered development.
Yes, under this standard, that is development, yes. This is a stricter standard of development than is applied under the Sheridan Code as a whole.
Yes.
And that's universal. There's no way for us to modify that. That would be true of the permit by permit process as well. It's really tough to have this conversation because our options are what FEMA has given us. We've got 3 boxes. 2 of the boxes are functionally the same, and 1 of the boxes is ban all development in the floodplain. And until 2027, those are our options.
So we are talking about everything that's in the blue.
Yeah.
we
This is
everything.
And Liam, you might be able to correct me if I'm wrong. Even this map we're looking at, I mean, it's dated 2017, but I think you and I have talked about, isn't there like a new standard as far as determining what is floodplain?
Potentially, our last firm was done in 2010. So somebody could do a letter of map amendment to modify whether they're in the floodplain or not. The new regulations right now, in this primary implementation compliance period, FEMA has also presented letters of map amendments that are based on fill. So you can't fill yourself out of the floodplain while these regulations are in place. But if someone believes that their property is outside of the regulatory floodplain, they can hire a surveyor to perform a letter of map amendment to remove it from the floodplain. But that registered surveyor would have to identify that topographically it isn't actually the floodplain. So our maps may not be precise, but they are what FEMA has adopted.
Liz, go ahead.
Why would a permit by permit option be a bit more expensive?
Because the city would have to make a determination on who can prepare it. We could, as part of our code, say, hey, anyone can prepare this habitat mitigation report. That's totally fine. The issue is the average person applying for a permit may see this report and go, I don't know how to do this, even if we let every single person prepare it. And a lot of people would then hire a biologist. We could also adopt a standard that says, hey, you have to have either a 4-year degree in biology from an accredited institution or demonstrate you had at least 2 field studies in biology or blah, 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 to be a registered person to prepare this report. That's some language that FEMA has provided. That would then direct all applicants to the biologist. Now, I do like the idea of like, hey, you can prepare this report. But then every single time an applicant prepares that report, staff then also have to spend staff time sending things back. And so not only is that potentially costly if you have to hire a contractor to prepare the report, it's potentially costly as you have to have a staff time reviewing that and making sure that it's accurate if we let anyone prepare them. So there's swings and roundabouts to both options with the permit by permit. With the code, it just is like, you show this on the plans. There's no need to do this additional report where you say, hey, here's the possible species impacted, and I listed all of them. It's just, nope, show what you need to show on your plans, and we will approve it, and it's based on this standard. And because both paths lead to the same standard, ultimately, you're gonna have to show the same things as an applicant. Earlier on in this process, I was very interested in the permit by permit, and I've attended a training on the permit by permit option, and it really seems the more cities, and specifically planners, are talking about this, the less of a different option it really is. It might be easier for a community that rarely sees applications to adopt that, because they might only need to make a small change to their code. But if a city regularly sees floodplain development applications like we do, it may benefit us for the cost of the consumer, right? The cost of the developer, the cost of the property owner, to just make the code amendments up front. We will have to adopt new rules in 2027, regardless.
Thank you.
So it kind of sounds like you have a recommendation which route to go. It kind of sounds like the code amendment is kind of the way, probably the best way. Yeah.
The staff memo highly recommends the code amendment option. Although again, we could give people the option to do permit by permit and code amendment. It would simply be adding a line of code that FEMA would have to review during our adoption process. That's a path forward. I just don't see it as being utilized.
If you did add that language, who would be reviewing those permits, and would that be you?
It would be me. I am our floodplain manager, so I would be reviewing the permits.
Okay.
Yeah, most likely. There's the potential to train other staff to do it, but by default, floodplain review is done by the planner at City of Sheridan.
Okay. Are any other questions for you? I think we get a consensus to. I don't think we have to vote. We can just direct the city to move forward with pick on one. Is that sounds funny to say, but is that kind of what we have a consensus to do? Yeah, it would be a code amendment. Jim, go ahead.
He obviously knows what he's talking about here. He might have even read this entire bunch that I never got to, but if he recommends picking one, I'm gonna trust that he knows what that is and permit by permit approach, it's just gonna take more time and probably more money along the way too, is that right, Leah?
It would probably take more resources for the applicant and the property owner. The code amendment may take slightly more resources.
Leanne, hold on a second. The train's
So, yeah, I'm for that.
usually just loud at the beginning. All right, I think you're good.
So, I think the way that I would weigh it is the code amendment may take us a little bit more resources up front. But either way, we'd ultimately have to make an amendment to the code. We'd have to add to our code that you're required to do the permit by permit. So I'm gonna be doing all of those hearings anyway. And because you don't have to hire someone to prepare the document potentially, it could be less costly for property owners and developers. So it may be a little bit more for the city up front, but probably cheaper at the end for the average person. And I would like to point out to council that in 2027, that's the estimated timeline. We know it took them over 15 years to get here, so it could be even longer. There will be new rules that are different than these that we will have to adopt at that time. And for all of these processes, we don't really have a choice. It's kind of unfortunate.
Okay, can we get, do we have a consensus to go with number one? We can direct city staff to move forward.
That's good to me.
Okay. All right, does that work for you, Liam?
Totally, I will notify FEMA that we are moving forward with our code amendment process. So, thank you, everybody. If anybody has any questions about this, feel free to email me. This is a lot, so I really appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me rapid fire it. We'll go through more detail on what this looks like when we actually have our code hearings, and I hope you all will be able to get a good, get your claws into it then. So, thanks everybody for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night, Leah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're going backwards to the consent agenda. We can approve the minutes and the voucher directory in one motion, or we can separately. Anybody have any questions on the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the city council meeting minutes for October 1st, 2024 and November 4th, 2024.
I second it.
All right, Foxy, do you have a question?
I do that.
Oh, okay. All right, first and a second, any other discussion about that or questions or? Okay, all right, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Okay. All right, next we have the voucher directory. Are there any questions on that? All right, Jim, Stacy, are you back?
I am.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I talked with Ron before the meeting. The Tyler version is, I'm guessing it's being kind of run as a beta test to see how it matches with the software we've been using. Is that a fair statement?
Yes and no. It is the report that you guys will be getting moving forward, starting January, I'd say January. That will be the only report you will get. You won't have to run the system. There are payables that were done in the legacy system, so that's why you have the vision report. And then the Tyler one is the payables that were ran through our new ERP program. So they are not going, those reports will not match. They're separate payables.
So that was kind of my question as I started to go into the Tyler paperwork. A lot of the numbers didn't match what we were seeing in the vision paperwork, and that confused me. ours, how does that average out?
Are you speaking in general to the payables? What numbers are you seeing that are not matching?
Well, I've kind of jumped ahead a little bit, and I probably shouldn't have, but the expenditures, using the line numbers, I just started glancing at the wages for both City Hall, sewer, and water, and they don't match.
Correct.
And that's to be expected?
Unfortunately, right now, yes. Today I spent several hours with the ERP programmers moving those numbers into ERP. So that is still happening. We have a drop dead date of I believe it's December 6th, where everything will be entered into ERP and tied out to our legacy system. So that's why I'm saying beginning January, these reports from Tyler will be correct. It'll be the only system we will be using, and I will have been able to move all of those expenditures over. So starting October 1st, any payables that were ran through Vision, and there were quite a few, have to manually be entered back into ERP and then paid with the check number to match Vision. When you're looking at the wages, we are not live with payroll and human resources just yet. We have our first parallel payroll next week, where we're going to be running both at the same time and making sure that the taxes match, the wages are there. We're having to do that data dump employee by employee so that at the end of the year, their W-2s are correct. And that is in process right now. Elisa and I are meeting with Cody Jones with ERP basically every day but Friday, dumping this data over. So I do know it's confusing, and I am here to try to answer any questions I can, but we are working into systems right now.
Thank you.
It sounds like a lot of work.
It's been fun.
And on the revenue side, if I might add, on the revenue side, we also had our utility billing system and our cashiering dumping into two different systems. So it is a lot to move over manually.
Yes.
Roxy, go ahead.
Well, like page 101, we've got fund summaries. I mean, we've got negative. What is negative? So
Which page is that, Roxy?
Which is fund summaries. I did
Page 101.
101 of the packet, page,
Oh, I'm sorry, I see it here. My apologies, I see it. 101, that's 95, I'm getting there.
What was that?
89. I only have 100, I don't have that one.
here in this. We got budget in the negative, activity in the negative, we've got year-to-date budget in the negative, we've got year-to-date activity in the negative, and we've got total budget in the negative. These numbers don't mean anything to us.
Unfortunately, right now, these also don't mean anything. None of these accounts have been balanced out at all.
That's a good question, though. We'll make sure we don't have negative 19 million in our budget.
I can assure you we are not negative 19 million. It is the way the program is, and we've dumped some information in there, which is what's going to be creating this. We don't have the other. We do have a lot of expenses that have been pulled out of the ERP program. However, we haven't got to the revenue side to dump all of that in.
ERP.
So Tyler Tech, ERP.
Okay. So it just didn't make any sense, a lot of things to this, so I didn't try.
I completely understand, and I do apologize.
I just wanted to know about
It is a work in progress.
It looks like when this council has a chance to look at this, it'll be easier to read in the long run.
I think so. I really liked the new
There's more.
AP directory.
Yeah, this looks a lot like basically like the checks I signed, because it's listed out.
Yes.
And it's got everything, so it's got a lot more info on there.
Thank you.
But some of these, are you adding notes on here yourself too?
Yes, I will. So if you're looking at the payable detail by vendor name from the Tyler Tech ERP, you'll see where the vendor is, and then under that, I'm looking at the first page, which is, I believe your guys' page, maybe
Kind of hard to read it.
33, yeah, it's kind of in there.
33, yeah.
33, yeah. So the first one is, air safety. It says in there the AED pads for library. That is going to be the description section of what I personally add in there to try to explain that payable.
And that's not like the fund name. The fund name is maintenance and repairs, but
Correct.
that note is saying what it's for.
Correct.
Okay, so that will help us know what's being used, because maintenance repair, I mean, that could be anything, but that's great that can be added. I'm sure it's more work for you, but I know it'll probably help us understand a lot.
I hope so. If you do look at some of these, one of the abilities that we have, and like I said, this is a work in progress, so this is not a perfect report, but you will see where it says commodity, and it says goods and services, and occasionally it says not applicable. When it's goods, I am actually able to enter in each item at its cost. It doesn't happen for each one, but if it is something that I can do that with, I am taking the time to enter each item in so you can see the cost of each thing.
Can you do that for revenue also?
I will try, yes. It should be able to be detailed out the same.
What would be nice would be have the grants identified, because otherwise, it's just as grant. If we could identify it, that would give us way more information too.
And then we might not need the grant. Well, we might still want the grant.
Well, yeah.
Our grants are gonna switch over to this software too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have so much entry.
I know, I know we need more now, I just want
No,
to put the possibility.
Yeah.
No, it's good to know what you guys would like, because as I am working through this with the project managers, I'm able to take those notes to them and make sure I can actually do that in the reporting. So I'm happy to hear what you want, and I'll do my very best to build it.
Jim?
I have a question, not so much about the two different systems, but, starting on page 20, we're paying, delay land and financial services incorporated for a lot of our leases.
Yes, it is
I just want to make sure I pronounce it right, is that
Delage.
Okay, we
I
got it.
probably don't pronounce it
Okay,
correctly.
under the, from 10:15 to 11:24, middle of the page, the lease for the dome security cameras is going to, Delage, whoever. But then when we go to, in the other system, on page 41, we've got a, dome camera lease, 1, 2, 3, 4, vendors down. And the dates are not the same, but they're similar.
Hold up,
Sure.
what page was the second one?
41.
41?
Mhm.
41, here it is, and you are looking
I'm looking at the fourth one down, or one up from the bottom, the, PAC Solutions.
Yes, and so that's Peak Solutions.
Okay.
They are another one of the dome cameras that are being leased through them. It was, I'm gonna say like a backside purchase done on our finance side that we don't have anything to do with.
They essentially sold our lease.
Yes.
Oh, so it was leased through somebody and then that was sold to another company.
Yeah.
Basically, the original company got bought out.
Go to buy a house and then they sell your.
Yeah.
Just the first one, page 20, the sewer water.
So the first dome camera Jim was talking about, is that a different dome camera than what's going
That's
on
what I
the
was able to see.
It is all of the different cameras, yes. And so, and I have sent requests into both of these in the past, and I will follow up with that to find the exact location of each camera that we are being billed for.
We see them in our
Yes.
system.
And then right below that, not the same equipment.
That is a mistake on mine, that's a copy and paste error.
Okay, so,
The voiceover services are just that, from 10:1 to 10:31.
okay,
That top line is correct, the second one is a mistake, I apologize.
okay. So they're different services, therefore that's why they're different.
Yeah, the Lane Cloud is part of our phone systems.
So that doesn't need to be.
We'll stick with here, try and make this fast and failing horribly. We've got this, on page 27, the Skybridge Lumber and Hardware, billing charge back to the contractor. So we bought a pipe fitting, but the contractor's gonna pay us back for that, is that?
That's correct.
Okay, good, thank you. On, page 29, on the US Bank credit card, there's a lot of travel and education, lines, and they're all billed to 630, which of course is training and travel education. Who went for what training? What's
All
that?
of that is detailed out on the US Bank credit card statements that are also in your packets. That's where you're gonna find the actual detail for every single purchase on any credit card.
Okay. It should be right after the,
Yes, and I don't have a packet, but I'm not exactly sure.
It might be page 51.
It's page 51 and 52.
51 and 52, okay.
it looks like,
Wastewater,
Brandon O. and then, Gary M., is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So nice that you know what these numbers mean, and I keep having to guess at it. We got here nothing exciting. I think, might be- on page, crap, I can't read it. The first page of the, Tyler Tech,
Okay,
right at the very bottom, Weimar, new basketball hoop net to replace the old one. Okay, that's probably what happened. But then I noticed, the actual basketball hoop was bought from Davison. On page, this is page 35. I show, right at the bottom of that page, it shows that description, basketball hoop for park. And the price is about the same for nets, a little less, but, they seem an odd bunch to
right there.
have, auto parts. But,
Yes,
that's
correct.
basketball.
I do believe it was also a net, and I missed the word net in that purchase, because there's no way they bought the basketball hoop for, unless they bought the ring.
So that's what I was thinking, that one is for the nets, and I know that, I've seen basketball hoops without, and they suck for playing. And then we bought a new hoop for the park, but I'm just wondering if Davison is the one who,
Yes, that is absolutely where they bought it.
okay, cool. Learn something new about Davison all the time. We talked about peak. In the, this is the Tyler summary. Looking at, it's on page 48, I'm sorry, page 48. It shows $865 for computer maintenance and supplies for the City Hall, library, and police, etc. It's in that same account summary box. Next one down, we got $3,896.10 for computer services, and then finally $3,896.10 for water expenses. But they don't seem to match up with the previous computer expenses that I'm seeing previously.
So out of curiosity, when the original ones that you're seeing, are they on the vision report, the first section? Because I do believe we have some Tyler payments in there.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is, that these are all to Tyler for, financials, training and configuration, implementation, training and configuration, utility bill data conversion. And the total on that, including this on page 28, I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. The total comes to $10,648, which even includes the, looks like the rebate is the right word, but they're gonna pay us money back or something.
Yes.
That number comes up.
Correct, and that is because it is in the separate systems. That is what it is. So the, $10,648 is exactly what we paid out of the Vision software. And then on the payables in the Tyler Tech, that is separate invoices that are not the same as necessarily what is in Vision. So you shouldn't, I did try really hard to make sure we didn't have any duplications.
Sorry, Stacy.
Between the two. So those numbers will not match, because again, they're out of two separate systems and they're different payables.
So, well, just for me, I'm not finance just like you. In Vision, we paid Tyler $10,648. Is that correct?
Correct.
But then in Tyler, we paid another $8,658 for computer maintenance and services.
Is that what you calculated out of the summaries?
Yes.
Okay, not necessarily then, because we do have other bills that are coded to those same codes. So multiple computer solutions also goes to IT and computers, which I do believe we paid them $2,200 as well. So if you took out $2,200 out of the total you just gave me, that might be the Tyler, unless there's some additional ones in here that were also coded to computer and IT. So the summary is just for that GL code, not necessarily for the vendor.
Or for a file.
So, before I go cross-eyed, I think I have one last question, and this is, I think, more to Heidi than to you. I see that the Public Works bought a new Canon color laser printer. Did the old one die? Just guessing. I don't know.
Yeah, that one was at the sewer plant.
So is that just a little one, as opposed to getting a big one and leasing it?
I haven't seen the size of it, but if you're talking about like a household kind of one, it's larger, it can do more than that, because it does get used more, but it's not like a lease or anything.
Right. That's what I was seeing, is that we actually purchased versus.
Yes, I do have the specs for that purchase in my office, if anybody's
Not
interested to
specs, I
see
just wanted to
exactly
hear
which
that
it is, but it's kind of a household one that you would buy by a little bit.
That was a replacement.
Yeah.
Wasn't something we needed to do. Okay.
For more prints to be printed.
Probably doesn't need a staple that much.
No, it doesn't have any of that stuff.
But they do surprisingly make a lot of reports that they turn out at the sewer department. They're doing a lot of scanning.
I have no more questions. I just did massive numbers.
And I'm happy to sit down with you or anybody else at any time, especially with the confusion between the two reports. I'm always happy to try to explain it.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Anybody else?
No, that's more than enough.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your hard work.
I do have a motion to approve the Voucher Directory.
I move we approve the Voucher Directory as presented.
Second.
All right, first and second. Any other discussion on it? Okay, all right, all in favor? No, that's unanimous. Okay.
And thank everybody for putting up with me. I hoped it made more sense when she explained it, and it did, but I think we all learned a little something there. So I hope it did.
Okay, so the bulletin board expenses says none, so do we keep going? Okay. All right, well, department reports, we heard from Sheriff Elliot, that was nice.
Public Works.
Yeah, we heard from Stacy. Well, I guess we heard from Stacy. No, Kai, go ahead, Kai.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My report, you'll see that we had a change in our water treatment plant certification. We now require an FE license, which is a filtering license. So our current DRC, that is the direct responsibility charge bring that up just because we've had a number of complaints about plugged lines, and most of the plugs have been on our side of the lateral, and most of them don't have a clean out for maintenance either for us to access.
Great.
So we're going to be digging up those lines and installing clean outs and then cleaning those lines. So you're gonna be seeing some bills from contractors. Most of the lines in town are too deep for us to dig. We don't use shoring or don't have shoring training. So we will have to hire a contractor to assist us with that. Normally what that looks like is we do all the excavation, he goes in the hole. So we try to keep the cost down.
It seems like an expensive process.
Sorry, I should have asked you.
No, you're okay, go ahead.
How do you determine where to put the cleanup?
They go on the property line.
Okay.
Yeah, right at the property line.
So what if one exists, already?
It gets, we technically, we don't use the homeowners because that's on the private side and that's plumbing code.
Mhm.
And not in our jurisdiction. Our jurisdiction starts at the property line. So plumbers are on one side of the line, we're on the other.
Is it kind of similar to like the water line, kind of it's like whatever's coming, from the street side is the city's water line, and then after the water meter, it's the.
That's exactly the same, yeah. So I just want to bring that to your attention because we're gonna have a few more coming up and you'll see them in the building. We've been picking up a lot of leaves. The sweeper's been working great. We did break down as soon as I wrote this report. I'm not kidding you. Sent it and then found out the sweeper broke. So we have already got it repaired. I don't know if it was warranted or not. We're still waiting to hear on that part because it is a fairly new sweeper. But it is still an improvement over the last one. It's doing well. I do previously before. They work in a really harsh environment. So they do tend to break down quite a bit, but it was water slowing, so we're able to run it as long as it's raining. So we've had luck with that.
Sleeping Beauty, yes.
So, yeah, I think we lost him for half a day so far. That's good. Had some vandalism in the parks. We had some after I wrote this as well. The new basketball hoop that I heard you ask about got torn down. It was less than 24 hours, I think. We tried to report all that.
Did we get any video of these vandals as they?
They looked, they saw it, they turned it over to the sheriff's department. It was 3 younger gentlemen.
Probably not gentlemen.
Yeah, I was thinking, gentlemen might be really good.
Ruffians.
The storms, obviously, we're watching those really closely. Right now, they're not calling for any flooding in this area, but they are calling for a significant amount of rain. So what we might see is some localized flooding, and that means Public Works needs to get out there and clean the catch basins. That's usually what does it. It can't be leaves plugging them. It can't be a plugged line. But we started cleaning those out last week, so we'll continue to do so. The maintenance crew's working on that. I think they got one down today. So that was plugged. We'll continue to do that. If anybody sees anything, maybe I'll make sure we put something in a newsletter or something that they can call on the Works and report that, and we'll get out there and clean them out. Projects, the ADA project downtown started. There was, it wasn't a great start, but it did start. I think things are back on track. They're a little behind schedule. I'm gonna be checking in with them today. So by the time I see you again, we should be about wrapped up with that project, hopefully, at least one side. The weather's gonna play a part in that though. With cold weather, you actually have to put blankets to keep the concrete warm so it cures correctly. And then of course, we don't want any rain on it because it'll crater it. So that may slow down that process, unfortunately.
Kai, could you talk a little bit about the other side, in the stamped?
Yeah, so the brick area. So that is a typical brick wall concept according to the drawing of the plans. I did ask for the actual color and I haven't heard back from, no. Actually, I was going to ask, the engineer had already sent an email asking for a submittal for the color. I went to send the email, so he'd already done that. So we haven't got a response back for the exact color yet, but as soon as we go over that to council. So I assume.
So the pattern will look brick-like, just in that.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, I can't remember if we discussed it or not, so I just wanted to have Kai share what the plan is for that sidewalk. Jim, go ahead.
I think we discussed that, but we were also talking about, as a look ahead, Lance and conduit at the same time in that same place, so when the time comes to actually lay some lines, we don't need to tear that beautiful concrete back up. Is that part of the process?
That is not in the bid. So that was awarded a month ago. So I don't know when it advertised, but we would have had to have negotiated, put that in the bid. We can negotiate that after the fact. I will say this, conduit or sidewalks is typically not for public city utilities. We're always we try to stay in the street, but that is the PUB, public utilities, so that could be gas, fiber, communications. I will talk to the engineer about that, okay, because now is definitely the time to have that session.
And the same thing, is there, I know they're already running a late, is there a projected finish date for that?
I calced it out last week for the building downtown, for the realtor, and based on where they're at on that day, it was December 9th. They worked on it a little bit today, so they're probably about, I'm gonna say December 12th right now.
That'll be basically all of them done?
Yep, that'll be all.
By that date. Good, yeah.
I just wondered, did Gary pass on some good information to the water folks about what he learned in Denmark as far as, is there a report or anything like that we can take a look at?
I think he's still working on that. I don't think
He's gonna come to council, give a presentation.
Thank you.
It's wastewater.
Oh, was it, oh, yeah, it's smart.
Liquid.
You get your hopes up.
I looked that up because he came back and told me some things that sounded great, fantastic, actually, really forward thinking. Their tax rate is 56%. It is the highest in the world. So, yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a great report.
Okay, okay, next library, Glenn?
Good evening. Sorry you just got my report this evening. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look over it.
1 second. Oh, right here. Just the number.
Yeah, so numbers are down a little lower. FCI has not been checking out. They didn't check out the whole month of October. So that affects numbers a little bit. So, not too much though. So that's good. I was looking at purchasing, we got the YCCO grant, early literacy grant. So I was looking at purchasing our Tonys the other day, 20 boxes and Tonys. And it came across that they had a program for schools, for discounts. And so I reached out to the company and they have just started a library program. So we'll be able to purchase a lot more items than we originally thought for our budget. So we were excited about that. We have a Friends of the Library group getting started. They met in the building last Tuesday. They'll meet again on December 2nd. So that's exciting.
Well, that can be, I'm not sure. So say somebody wants to make a tax deductible donation, they can't make one to the city because they're not a 501c3.
Yeah.
They can? Okay, do that, but okay, but with the Friends of the Library, I was wondering if that's kind of the thought, is they could be a 501c3 and then any donations to them would be tax deductible.
Correct.
Okay. That'd be great.
Quite a few libraries have Friends of the Library Associations.
And then, we're working on the first 3 months of the year, getting our calendars all going. We have Head Start, I believe it is January 15th. I could be wrong on the date, but they're coming in and doing a tour of the library and getting a story time and craft and everything. And we've also got information at the high school. We had a survey out to the teens there at the high school, seeing what they would like to have us offer for them. And we are setting up kindergarten through 5th grade field trips in this spring to the library. So it's kind of what we got going on right now. Any questions?
prisoners get to read again?
What's that?
When do the prisoners get to read again?
I'm not sure, they put a hold on their program, and so we're just still waiting to hear back when they're ready to start that program again.
Alright, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next. Okay, yeah, we have a code enforcement report. Any questions or?
No, but these reports are great.
Yeah.
Very, very complete.
It looks like she also, Angela adds in here about the turkey.
Yeah, community initiatives, so.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Don't mind, Mayor. I'd like to let everybody know, especially about the feral cat and stray cat TNR, which stands for trap, litter, and return. Oh, she put that in, good. She's only been able to get to just a couple of sections of town and has this many. So it's really been quite the program to be able to do it pull off, but that's a lot of potential cats that could have been feral cats. Not all of them get returned though, because they do get tested for diseases. Put down if they have. Anyways, I've been really super impressed with the amount of cats that Angela's been able to help with. It is one of the things that we've heard so much about in the community. She'll be working in different parts soon.
You had a question?
Well, I was just gonna say that it's at no cost to the city, so all these cats are getting spayed and neutered and, vaccinated at no cost to the city, which is pretty remarkable. This program, Orphan Kitten Rescue of Oregon, pays for it through donations and grants.
She is looking for people to do the turkey trot. So if you want to start your Thanksgiving morning off on a healthy foot, go on out to the Southside Park and get some exercise.
10 laps around the pond is what we figured out.
Yeah.
10 laps around the pond. Okay.
Any questions on that report?
No, it's fantastic. Whenever I see her, I always tell it's fantastic.
It is very complete.
Okay, we'll move on then to city reporter report.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. She did want me to mention too about the firewood drive. We're very thankful to have Stella Jones's help and the Grand Sheridan Food Bank's help. But if you do know people that live off of having heat only in their home by firewood, this is a great opportunity for them, especially if they struggle financially.
Okay, all right, you want?
The grant tracking sheets, those will soon also be changing because we'll be, slowly but surely entering those grants onto, our new software. As soon as financials wakes up completely and is able to be fully loaded, then we'll be able to start loading that next piece. So those reports are going to look a lot different than they do now, and I'm actually really excited because, I don't love how they look now, but it's just, they are what they are. So, the only thing that I was gonna steal out of Heidi's was our sneaker, for success shoe drive. It is going a lot better than I had even hoped for. First Federal has, put out a donation location there, and they collected, well, last time I heard, which was like 2 weeks ago, about 25 pairs. And then I got to like 30 something over there when I was counting the other day, and I stopped counting. I'm like, I'm sure between us and First Fed, we've made our, what we were hoping to make by December 2nd. So there's still time. I noticed we've got actually, what I'm surprised by is we've received more larger size shoes for like more teenagers and stuff, because that's what we sort of like, well, not all little, and we don't have as many littles. So if you're thinking about picking something up or you're in the store holiday shopping, if you're thinking about the littles, that would be awesome, so, but thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, go ahead.
I don't understand this one, tracking for the, water management plan. Even on, it's, page 135. Even the expense total, 199, 200 goes above the 185,000 they started with. Where does that extra $14,200, where does that come from for them?
Yeah, how you go ahead?
Sure. So I looked into that. In December 5th, 2022, the city council did approve the $200,000 for the water master plan. So I have that here. And then in addition to that, it's been tracked on here, but it is for water modeling. And that was the engineer's scope of service. Kai is here to explain more about it, but I thought I would give you this background here from the engineer's office. As you know, after several months requesting the computer water model from the city's previous engineer, SA, we finally got it. The water model was done as a part of the 2007 Water Master Plan 18 years ago. We discovered a few things when we dove into the model. One, the water model, to say the least, was simple and not inclusive of your entire city. Two, the model did not include many of the important features of your water system. Three, in addition, the transfer of data to a newer computer software was cumbersome, and we weren't confident all the attributes and information transferred correctly. Much effort was spent ensuring the integrity of the transferring and the information only to find the model didn't consist of the entire city. As you can appreciate, modeling of a water system is crucial to a thorough evaluation of the water system. What we are anticipating getting, we didn't get. Our scope was to update the model, expecting it to generally be ready to use. What we have discovered, unfortunately, is the need to truly recreate the entire water system model. As such, we are requesting an addendum to our scope. And so that is the $14,850.
That was
dated July 27, 2023. And it isn't just to be used for just this program, for just the water master plan. Kai's here if you want to know more about
that. So probably in there, that 14,000 shouldn't be associated with the grant necessarily.
No, it is not a part of the grant.
Okay.
And it's also, it is necessary to do the water master plan, but it has other uses as well.
And for
water
okay.
plan.
But then for that math part though, that was city funds then.
Yeah, that's
grant
engineering
funds.
for water. Yeah, no grant then. I can pass this around if anybody wants to see.
I'm just pretty much tracking all of the expenses though on there that are associated with the water master plan, even though there won't be enough grant money, obviously, that would cover it. It's just nice to see it all in one spot.
Okay.
And that's why that would work in.
Yes.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
Yep.
because it's more of a project that she's
Mhm.
tracking than just grant.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Yvonne? Yeah, go ahead.
On page 136, the vote application says it expires on September 30th, 2024. Do we get some sort of extension on that?
That's not a grant, it's just another project that we've been tracking. We should take that out of your packets.
But there's not an expiration.
Just to get it out somewhere, which we already have done. It's a revenue source.
Oh, okay. So nothing that we can lose. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is a surprise. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been living there a long time.
Let's take that
Yeah.
out there.
Okay. Any other questions for Yvonne? Okay. All right. Thank you. Well, we heard from Liam, but he does have a separate report. If there's any questions about that. So he talks about the grant award. Oh, his is Yeah, it starts on 143. Any questions any questions about liens? Okay. All right, Tyler, you.
Yeah, I'm never ready. I'm busy, a lot going on, you keep me busy. Everybody keeps me busy. But we're getting good stuff done.
What are you getting done?
Good stuff, Liz.
Well, okay.
I used to try to figure out more in a tidy way, breaking down what I work on, but many of my days, I don't know what's gonna come up. And that's the nice thing about being here is Kai has questions sometimes that come up. I see Kale regularly. Yeah, Vaughn has questions, lots of people pop in with questions. And while they're sometimes straightforward questions, little chunks of time add up. And then there's packet prep that just feels like we're all continually on that treadmill.
Okay, any questions for Tyler? Okay, moving on then. So we have ordinances and resolutions. So, first one is an ordinance repealing section 13.04.140 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to water fluoridation. Any questions or discussion on this? Liz, go ahead.
This is not really a question, but have we talked to enough residents to make this decision? Not, after listening to the woman tonight, I was thinking, we really haven't put it out there to query what residents are feeling about that issue, and what if we make this decision to take it out of the water and then there's a lot of backlash.
Well, we've sent it out in water bills, we sent it out with a mailer. I believe maybe it was on Facebook, the Bulletin board has been running it. I don't know, and really, that's the only person I've heard from, honestly, about this, but, Ian, go ahead.
I agree that it is good to hear from everyone. However, I would point out too that Hillsborough just turned down fluoridating their water by the same concerted effort of folks that are talking to us. So, from what I understand, I should say that. From what I understand, I've been chatting with Jared from Virginia Garcia. He's been a very interesting guy. So he's lives in our community. So
Councilors, have you heard from anybody pro or against? Okay. Ian, were you gonna say something?
Oh. Yeah, I have. I have. They're for it.
Okay.
They're doing it.
I would say that a lot of the folks in the gardening community have reached out to me and said that they're thankful that we're removing it from the water. And I've assured them that we're gonna do our best to see that there's topical fluoridated treatments through Virginia Garcia or some other means in the future for the community that we, in some way that we can do.
I was just at the dentist last week, and you can buy fluoride mouth rinse over the counter in the drugstore. They gave me 2 samples.
Okay. How did it taste? Good. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that the one in Hillsborough was done with a vote.
Oh, okay. They're also quite large.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the way that they heard from the people. What
move to introduce ordinance, 2024-07, an ordinance repealing section 13.04.140 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to water fluoridation to be read by title only.
Nicely done.
All right, second. Second. Okay, first and a second, any discussion about that? Okay, vote by voice and show of hands, so either one, so, all in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, that looks unanimous.
Thank you all for saving me, well, this is shorter than the last one I had to read, but I appreciate being able to read it by title. Ordinance 2024-07, an ordinance repealing section 13.04.140 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to water fluoridation.
Make a motion for you, accept the reading?
Second.
All right. First and a second, any discussion on that? Okay, Yvonne, can you take a roll call vote?
Acuff.
Yes.
Hebert.
Yes.
Buckles.
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy.
Yes.
Hodges.
Yes.
Okay.
I make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-07 to be read by title only, second reading?
Second.
Okay, first and a second. Any discussion on that? Okay. So, vote by voice or hands. It says voice hands. All right, that looks unanimous.
It's like ASL.
Yeah, you could do either.
Ordinance 2024-07, an ordinance repealing section 13.04.140 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to water fluoridation.
Make a motion to accept the reading?
Second. Third.
All right, first and a second. Any discussion on this? Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right, Yvonne, can you take a roll call vote?
Acuff.
Yes.
Hebert.
Aye.
Buckles.
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy.
Yes.
Hodges.
Yes.
Did you do the third reading at this meeting?
We can do
Okay, I move. Oh, we're reading now, or?
You-
Okay,
you
I
continue
move
with the
to
motion.
introduce ordinance 2024-07 to be read by title only for its third and final reading.
Second.
Okay, first and second. Assuming there's no discussion for the third time. All right, okay, all in favor? All right, that's unanimous.
Ordinance 2024-07, an ordinance repealing section 13.04.140 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to water fluoridation.
Make a motion to accept the third reading by title only. Second.
Okay, first, second. Any discussion? No, okay. Yvonne, can you take a roll call vote?
Yes. Acuff.
Yes.
Hebert.
Aye.
Buckles.
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy.
Yes.
Hodges.
Yes.
Okay. So that's it for that one. Okay. So, next one is ordinance 2024-06, an ordinance amending chapters 12.04, 12.08, 12.12, 12.16, and 12.20 of the Sheridan Municipal Code related to public works standards.
I make a motion, to introduce ordinance 2024-06, first reading by title only.
Second. Okay, first and a second. Any discussion on it? Okay, all right, all in favor? Okay, that looks unanimous.
Ordinance 2024-06, an ordinance amending chapters 12.04, 12.08, 12.12, 12.16, and 12.20 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to public works standards.
Make a motion to accept the first reading.
Second. Okay, first and second, any discussion? Yeah, okay, all right, Yvonne, can you take a vote?
Yes. Acuff.
Yes.
Hebert.
Aye.
Buckles.
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy.
Yes.
Hodgins.
Yes.
Make a motion to introduce ordinance 2024-06 to be read by title only for second reading.
Okay, first and second. Any discussion? Yep, okay. All in favor? Okay, let's see.
Ordinance 2024-06, an ordinance amending chapters 12.04, 12.08, 12.12, 12.16, and 12.20 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to public works.
I move to accept the second reading of ordinance 2024-06. Second?
Okay, first and second. Any discussion? Oh, okay. Yvonne?
Ahab,
Yes.
Hebert. Buckles,
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy,
Yes.
Hodgins.
Yes.
Okay, so I wanna make a motion to read it for the third time.
I make a motion to read the ordinance for the third and final time by title only.
Second.
Okay, first and second, okay, any discussion? No, okay. All right, all in favor? Okay. Unanimous?
Ordinance 2024-06, an ordinance amending chapters 12.04, 12.08, 12.12, 12.16, and 12.20 of the Sheridan Municipal Code relating to public works standards.
Do a motion to accept this.
I make a motion to accept the third reading of the ordinance.
Second it.
Okay, first and second. Any discussion? No, okay, Yvonne, can you call vote?
Ahab,
Yes.
Hebert.
Aye.
Buckles,
Aye.
Houston.
Aye.
McElroy,
Yes.
Hodgins.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. Okay, we can skip over Liam's part. So we'll end up on page. Yes. Or the end. 269, okay.
Actually, it's 270 around.
Okay. So, ARPA funding, we have a couple, packages here. Is there any one of these that kind of jumps out? I kind of like B, because it seems like we kind of are able to do all those projects we kind of talked about last time that we were going to do. But of course, we have several options, so.
Do you wanna hear which ones we want and we go from there, or how do you wanna do it?
I can. You know, though, people might have.
I have a bunch of questions.
Go ahead, Jim.
In package A, you've got Morgan parking lot complete at $430,000. And then, where'd you go here? Package B has, Morgan Street parking portion, 254. And then, package C, we got Morgan Street parking lot starting at 329, 329 in package D. And then we go back to, package E, where it's Morgan Street parking lot starting, again, it's 430.
No, yeah.
That's what I'm getting paste there.
That should probably be less.
Yeah.
That's what I was confused about, so I wait, those
Yeah.
numbers don't.
Does that mean you want to eliminate starting or the figure?
No, it would be
Less money.
it would be, I think, less money than that, because it's probably still the same dollar amount as it said.
It should be completed.
329 rather than.
So you're saying, okay, so instead of starting, it should just be Morgan Street parking lot, because is the dollar amount correct on E?
No, the dollar amount's different, so it's 430 on E, it should be 329, the same as.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, is it might actually,
I think the 430 was for the entire project.
Yeah, it's package A.
Just the
it
word
says-
starting should be removed
Yeah.
from package.
okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
cross starting off, so in E.
And it should have an asterisk.
In-
It's complete.
Okay, so then in package E, it would be completed.
Yeah, so.
And
430 is how much it costs to complete it.
But in package B, portion of it, yeah, it's 254, but then, money from the street fund would finish it. So we kind of use some of our funds, some of ARPA. Does anybody not want B?
There you go.
That's what I highlighted.
It seemed like it would get 176. Street.
Are we supposed to be making a motion or,
Yeah, I mean, is there any discussion about any of the packages? I mean, does somebody,
it'd be great if we could do everything that we can.
well, yeah. Is there any, is anybody strongly or kind of questions about any others, or would prefer another one? Denny, go ahead.
I kinda like E with the solar speed signs. We've been discussing that for a while. I feel it.
That, yeah, and I want those solar speed signs too, but I'm wondering if, since it's 15, I'm wondering if we could, at the next budget cycle, just use 15 from the street fund maybe. But,
If we could, that'd be great.
yeah. Heidi, do you think that's doable?
Yeah.
Next year, allocate 15,000 from the
The
streets.
street fund is always not having enough money to do
That's what I worry about.
things, so.
So,
if I kinda like E2, I didn't mind the solar signs, but the extra amenities, if something were, because I know there's been a tough time getting those engineers to budget the funds for the pavilion. And that way, if you didn't have to use all that, could it be put into what might be lacking in the building of the Morgan Street, which is attached to that, versus the pavilion?
Can you say that again?
Let's say one of those runs over, let's say one of them becomes 350,000 instead of 332. Could you borrow, because it's on the same, the extra amenities, if that was over, could you put that towards the first line versus the bottom line? If that ended up running more than, because I know that they're like this on that a little bit.
I don't know what the.
So they can
I
actually
have
get
to
the
look up
project finished.
I will have to look up the federal code for that, because the word obliged is being used.
like,
So-
would you maybe just combine the 332,000 amount and the 44,000
I
amount?
understand, but you have to understand how technical these laws are right now. They're super, very technical, so even though we may have these here, we may have to even do everything that's listed, you know what I mean? I don't know, the laws are like this for this stuff right now, like it's a huge amount of information. And so I think that when you list that you're going to be doing things, you're going to be doing those, whether or not you have to end up making up some of the difference.
Okay.
So, for example, then on the Bolton pump station, if that only came to 300,000, what would you do with that extra 50?
I don't know, I'll have to look up the federal code is what I'm saying.
How many solar speed signs would we get with 15? I'm trying to remember, was it 3? Okay.
And you have to remember, you're obligated then out of the city budget for at least $1,000 a year for the software for those. Every year going in perpetuity, and you cannot use ARPA funds for that.
Right. Okay, Ian.
Can we hear from Kai on his opinion of any of these?
Kai helped me put them together.
Okay.
So he was asked that earlier by the mayor. Do you have anything you want to add? You'll have to come to the microphone.
I did have this discussion earlier today, and the mayor was present. There is an additional 90,000
much or total?
140 for water, 90,000 for sewer.
But the amounts,
300,000 for water is what's budgeted.
340 for Alston.
No, in our budget booklet, there's 300,000 for water stated for this year. We saved 150 from last year, and then, because we knew it'd be about 300. And then for sewer, there's 150,000 for this year.
I'm just going off the projects page.
Oh, this project page, yes.
No, the one in the budget.
Yeah, that should have that.
alright, Denny,
Has ODOT ever been approached about speed sign? Solar.
that's a good question. I'm not sure, we can find out, they may be willing to add some on Main. I mean, I don't know if they have any money. If it's suit, but we can definitely find out about that. I think, I know there's been some like throughout Yamhill County, like Yamhill and, going outside of the building in Yamhill, they've added some. Okay, alright, Ian.
Frankly, I don't care for the parking lot thing, but it seems like everybody else does, so I'm willing to back off that. We can do that, whatever, we can do that if you guys really wanna do that. I'm liking the B, I'm wondering if we could amend it in some way to add the speed signs into that, out of maybe one of the SCADA systems for the water plant or sewer plant, since we do have some funds available.
You can do that, or, you know, the other thing is, I know the emergency lift station repair is important to everybody, but it's already paid for and done. So you can just do that instead.
Just paid for out of like sewer fund, oh, okay, sewer fund, okay. So,
I mean, it does get us a project that's done, is what I was thinking. So that's good, but you
well,
can
I
also.
mean, so on package B, the emergency lift station repairs
Oh,
are already completed and paid for out of the maintenance budget for sewer.
Yes.
So that's already been paid for. This would basically, I guess, just reimburse us. But we could take that 39,000 and then spend it on something else. We could get a lot of speed signs for 39,000.
Well,
yeah,
you could just take the 39,000, you could do 15,000 out of that for street signs and then move the remaining into the Morgan Street Park, so that, or parking lot, so that less comes out.
Of the street fund?
I can do that math if you want.
All right, Ian?
I have heard from at least two folks in town that they would like to see more speed signs on Main. And I mean, I drive pretty slow. My wife makes fun of me, so. I've had people pass me on that road and I don't even know, I'm pretty sure it's legal, but I'm not sure. Yeah, right, yeah, so I'm pretty sure it's legal, but it is, people are trying to get through that pretty quick, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's
amazing.
not comfortable, we've passed on that for sure.
Well, yeah, because it's a major one. I think we could even have two. It's so long, like even
Sure.
back toward like Rock Creek.
Sorry.
And like, I guess it depends on how it would be paid, but I know we could put two on Main and then one on Sheridan Road, and then that's our three. And those definitely need them, but we should have one on Bridge. We should probably have one by the school.
Yeah, right in school. How you wanna come back and talk about the placement?
Yeah, Ian, real quick, go ahead.
The only thing I would add to that is that maybe we could do, since there is a little play in here, and maybe we could hear from Kaya or Heidi on this, is maybe we could add a little more in there for a few more street signs, I don't know, since we're putting it in a street sign fund, or is that just a pain in the ass to add street signs onto, like, whatever street signs we might need to do?
So just for clarification, I just wanna make sure that you know that these are like, of the electronic street signs, these are like.
Yes, I'm aware of that part, yes.
Okay.
I'm wondering if can we make it so that, because I'm sure we need more street signs.
Why don't you hear from Kai first about the location of where they need to go,
Okay.
or how they can put out.
So the three things I would take into consideration about the locations is one, residents, yourselves, Public Works. The other ones outside the city would be the Sheriff's Department, and then there is an ODOT rating for crashes. So every time there's a crash in town, it gets reported to ODOT, and they track all of those. We can back access that information. And so that might help you narrow down if it's a close vote on where they should go. You can get the information from the sheriff's department and ODOT that might help you make that decision.
Okay, that's good. Within like the proximity of, you talked to me about that. Like on Sheridan Road, you were talking about how far off. Or within the district.
Okay, go ahead, Jim.
So do we have to decide tonight where we're gonna put it as part of this?
I don't think so. I think we just have to decide how many.
Yeah. So,
We could even, I mean, it would be two different votes, but we could allocate, you know, X amount of dollars minus the, I don't know, 35,000 or something if we wanted to spend a bunch on speed signs. That is one option, but, Heidi?
You could, I mean, I think that there's gonna be some actual costs too involved with the speed signs, like, digging it out and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
But
Well,
not too
probably
much of
electric-
that. I mean, we'll do,
costs.
yeah, well, they're solar.
Oh, so they're not plugging it all, okay.
I think they're solar.
it says so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so they won't have to get.
Yeah.
We have 4 that we rotate through the county, so they're, ours, we move.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Just so you don't get hung up on fixed spots if maybe they're different than the ones we have, but we move ours.
That'd be nice.
We have 4 that we use.
Change them out periodically.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I am a fan of.
like I said, I think you just need to pick projects. You don't necessarily need to attach prices to them at this point. So let's focus more on projects.
Okay, so maybe,
So just replacing street signs, package B,
And
strike emergency lift station and add street, solar street signs or whatever.
So then would that reduce the Morgan Street parking lot money from our fund to the 156 then? Is that what you got?
Yeah, but I think that they may end up spending more on solar street signs, and so that's, we'll work with the county and see which ones that they actually bought.
Yeah, like look at, check with the county, check with the ODOT data, that's, review the Safe Routes to School again and see if they have recommendations on where to put them.
Yeah.
And then if the council can even get some feedback, like I've heard, we need one on Sheridan Road, it sounds like we need some on Main, probably coming into Main, exit 34, and then probably even going out toward Rock Creek. Probably need one on Bridge.
We put one on Third Street that's going toward Faulkner Chapman.
Right.
It goes flying through there.
Right.
know.
So,
But I mean, the moving ones is probably a good thing.
yeah, and I like that idea because then if, I don't know, in the future, maybe people stop traveling on a certain road, then we can move it somewhere else, so. Okay, so if somebody wants to make a motion to, accept package B with the removal of emergency list, station repairs, and adding solar street signs, I think that's what we've got a consensus on.
I move that we, accept package B with the exception of emergency lift station repairs and adding solar street signs. Is that enough?
Yes. Okay, first and a second. Any discussion on that?
So Heidi, if they do that, if it's only 15 and they take the 15 and then they take it off the 180, but still adds up to 434.
We may actually spend more than 15,000 on solar street signs. We may
But I mean,
I
the
need
total
to
will
look.
still be the same.
Stacy and I will dive very deep down into the next steps of this. What we needed to do at this point was to obligate it for the projects.
I know, but I mean, it will still balance out those two figures no matter how you change them around.
Well, keep in mind too that there's the actual amount awarded was 1,380,000, so there is a little bit of a cushion too there with that 80. We have spent some of it already on the engineering involved for Sheridan Road because that was the way that we're going. So Stacy and I need to look at that too and backing those out and doing some journal entries. So we have quite a bit of financial work that we have to do, but Councilor Hebert, we will have to get back to you with that answer.
Right. We've got first and second. Any other discussion on So next, we have, the city manager and department head spending authority. Okay, so it looks like this was the original, or the last, like, purchasing authority that we passed.
So,
If you wanna run a discussion. Anybody have any questions? I was gonna, I'll be right back.
So, you know, in the last several months, council hasn't been made aware of where some big purchases are going, even if they're in the budget. They should be brought to the council to discuss.
I can't hear you, can you please?
I'll try to do it harder, I'm sorry.
I can't hear.
Okay. In the past few months, there's been some big expenditures that council weren't really aware of. And even if they were in the budget, I think council should have been discussed, it should have been discussed with council. Anyway, it used to work in the past, even if it's in the budget, the city manager would talk to the council and get approval to make big purchases. In emergency situations, that can be dealt with quite easily, quite quickly. It can be done by Zoom, by telephone. All it takes is 4 people and it can be dealt with. And so to keep this from happening again, I'd really like to drop this spending limit back, way back from 50,000. I'd like to go back to 1,500 for public works. And again, an emergency situation that can be dealt with. They can plan ahead far enough to see a big project coming to bring it to council and get it approved. That's where I stand on it, because I got blindsided by a few purchases that I thought council should have been at least made aware of and maybe had a little discussion. My take.
I think 1,000 and, what did you say for public works, 500? I don't think that's nearly enough in our economy for them to operate efficiently on. If they have to wait for council approval on a purchase, they've gotta wait sometimes a week or 2 for a meeting to get approval, and in the meantime, if they need a part, I just think that that may hold things up in the whole operation of things.
That's what the phone call or Zoom is about. It can happen in 5 minutes, it can happen in 10 minutes. Again, you budget out ahead, knowing if you've got this project coming up, it's gonna cost you X amount of dollars. Throw it to council, and we'll approve it right away.
But
Make it
parts
emergency.
go out, like, I mean, you can't always count on needing a part. You can have something break down anytime, so you can't budget, is what I'm saying.
I'm saying emergency then, it's an emergency meeting.
On
It
a
worked-
$1,000
it-
item, we'd be having tons of meetings, I think.
No, it worked in the past, so I'm not saying it has to be 1,000, but it's gotta be way less than 50,000.
I have a couple of notes here for everybody to consider. I've been doing some research. First off, I thought that we were going to have a group to study this. I have an email here from Ian. Greeting, ladies and gentlemen, it's dated September 24th. Recently, the city council has directed the creation of 2 committees or work groups. The first is examine the charter to add term limits, and then it goes on about that. And then it talks about the second group, which is for this budgeting and the expenditures. I replied the same day within about an hour here, hour and a half. All sounds good. Thank you, Ian, for taking the initiative. All sounds good. I will contact a person that's on the budget committee. We've been playing phone tag. I say if you're okay, I'll call her back, and if she's interested, I'm also happy to meet early in the morning as suggested. I have never heard anything since, and I have lots of things to give to that group, and I was wondering if that group has been meeting, and I wasn't invited? Okay, so I thought that Counselor McElroy, that's where the next steps were, because I'm happy to work with you. I have a purchase policy to be looking into this. I have all these other things that I've been learning from other cities. The city of Tillamook, the spending authority for the city manager, smaller city, $150,000. Crestwell, whatever's in the budget. Waldport, $50,000, no restrictions. Reedsport, $50,000. Boardman, no limit. Amity, $100,000 with some qualifiers. Coos Bay, $75,000. Newburgh, $100,000. City of Rogue River, $75,000. Gold Beach, $75,000, unless it's in the budget, and then they can spend. Talent, $35,000. Roseburg, $50,000. Klamath Falls, $35,000. We'll be raising to $50,000. Lafayette was the smallest at $15,000. Umatilla, $150,000. Veneta, $40,000. LeGrand, it is up to $150,000. Milton Freewater, $50,000. Coburg, $25,000, and in the process of updating it. And yes, so I don't know why we have to go through this in a council meeting. I've said that too, that I'm happy to look at this. I'm not set on the $50,000. I don't remember asking for it. So I think it was handed out. I also have other rules and procedures that will need to be updated too for that. So I'm ready to go, given everybody else is, but I guess we're just doing this a different way.
The one thing I've always wondered, I was here and we did this, the charter, which is supposedly what we have to use, that's why we can't start forward to a copy. It says the city manager's spending authority is $1,000.
It's not the charter.
Say again?
It's in the ordinances, it's not the charter.
Okay, so this supersede the ordinances?
We changed the ordinance.
Sounds like it's not actually in the charter.
Yeah.
Well, that was easy. So,
So like, I don't have a problem, with her having a bigger budget. I mean, you know, if you want to cut 50 in half to 25, I don't think she really they've overspent that much, according to a couple discrepancies about vehicles that weren't in a budget, so you're talking about extras. And maybe if there was like an $8,000 purchase because it was to fix an air conditioner at City Hall, and we wanted to know, geez, what was that $8,000 for, because it's probably for about 30 different things that's in one ticket, then I don't mind, you know, oh, by the way, you know, we're gonna spend $8,000 over here on an air conditioner because of this. If anyone wants to see it, they can ask me if she can give it to them. Otherwise, we kind of know what the big ticket numbers are. Versus just getting something, I don't think 1,005, that's like giving them 50 cents on a buck. I mean, I don't see them getting much if they have to pick up tools or supplies, or even gasoline costs $100. So you're already calling in, you know what I mean? It depends on what it is. But there could be accountability on an invoice if it was, the water department needed something, and just in case it wasn't one big thing, but it would be on an invoice that Stacy would do. It'd be on an invoice. It's just that she wouldn't have to rip it off all these things, because who's ever in charge of that department should be in charge of those invoices and those purchases that are being made. And I think that's an accountability that we should consider also.
So, monthly operating costs, which is your fuel and your rates and your heat and stuff, that's not included in this. That's monthly operating costs. Those are accepted.
That's all included in my purchase order policy that I have prepared and is sitting for this group to look at. So I don't know why we're doing this at this meeting. I also went back and I looked up the minutes. It's resolution 2023-DD, a resolution adopting a purchase policy. Councilor Acuff motion for the city council to approve resolution 2023-DD, a resolution adopting a purchase policy for the city of Sheridan. Councilor Hodgins second motion. Discussion. Councilor Buckles expressed concern regarding the increased purchase amount. There were additional concerns expressed in discussion about delegation of authority. Department Heidi emphasized that items purchased would be items that are already identified in the approved budget. So adding clarification, that's that project list that is approved by both the budget committee and by city council. Mayor Thompson, and by resolution, by the way. Mayor Thompson explained the current approval process and the many checks and balances already in the place for purchasing. Tyler clarified the language, additional authorized acts and defined the city. Motion passed unanimously.
Well, this is also discussion, so if there are changes, but it sounds like that there's basically a purchasing policy that's kind of ready to go.
Yeah, I've been waiting for
Would that be, can we do that and then see how that goes and come back to this needed? Does that sound fine? Okay, I believe.
What did you just try to say?
So you lost me too.
You were mumbling a little bit.
Sorry, there's a financial policy that Heidi has ready to be worked on. It sounds like with Stacy.
Yvonne, the treasurer.
So my suggestion would be go through that process, and then we can revisit the spending authority, see how that policy goes, and see what the policy, what the results are of that. And then if needed, we can come back to this and discuss. Go ahead.
Heidi, does that mean that you're proposing a change?
Yes, I've had it ready to go. I've been waiting for the invitation.
The policy change or
The purchase policy.
Okay.
I have a purchase policy, which I have drafted and we've been working on here, and I've been waiting since September 24th to go forward with that. I didn't know if the purchasing group was meeting without me.
Sounds like good work. So who was on that? Was that Ian, Denny, and Rocky?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Ian.
Ian, Denny, and Rocky. Okay. Yeah, Jim didn't work. Okay. Lucy.
Just postpone and wait for her to do her presentation.
Yeah.
You were asking, so I'm just saying.
Oh, yeah. No, yeah, that'd be, I guess, my suggestion, is just wait.
And in the meantime, this stays enforced, correct?
Yeah, as far as I know.
So when we picked up, I don't know, Ian said he was.
Ian, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, things have just been real busy for me, and I haven't pushed forward at all. The election was going on that, so if there's no objection, then I'll. I was also hoping, I was reaching out to a lot of people to see if folks in the community wanted to participate. I did run across one man, Stephen Raybeck, who suggested he was thinking about attending these meetings if they would be open to the public, which I'm 99% sure they would be, so that was the only person.
I'm not sure if they'd be considered a.
Although I'm not opposed to having members of the public involved, the mayor does the appointments to committees.
This isn't a committee.
I was under the impression that it was.
I thought you established a budget.
There's a budget committee, but this is like a group of, for the mayor and the appointment to the advisory. So it's an advisory committee, which also falls under the responsibility of the mayor.
Well, I guess we can, I find Steve would be part of it if I do need to appoint somebody.
I know Stephen personally, and he does not live in town.
That's what I have, they don't live in the city.
That's okay, some budget, is it?
He wouldn't have any monetary contribution to this budget except for economic development purposes, like just going and shopping.
Well, I was gonna say, 'cause there's some of our groups, is the parks group that can have somebody who lives outside of town, or the planning commission?
Yeah, both of those.
I figured it'd just be the same situation, I mean,
If this does nothing to do with revenue, then there's nothing, budget committee members.
It's inside the city.
Is inside of the city by state law, but this is not a, same as a budget committee, but it does, I mean, we're talking about water dollars, so it doesn't have water count, sewer count, it doesn't have sewer count. It doesn't count for any of the apportionments of the state taxes, sin taxes, he doesn't pay property taxes, so I'll leave that up to you, but just wanna let you know that.
property taxes to the city, I'll clarify that.
Yeah, he he doesn't pay property
I'm
taxes.
sure he pays property.
I'm sure he
Just
does
not
too,
the
he
city.
pays them to commission it.
But yeah, that's, I mean, I can think about that. I mean, initially, my initial thought is I don't have any problem with someone outside the city limits being a part of that. I think for sure, Denny and Roxy should, we might wanna meet, have one meeting, just, the committee members and move forward. Ian, yeah,
I think we should hammer down whether these are committees or not, because they're governed under different rules. So, Heidi has suggested in the past that these are to be called to be called a work group, in the email that you replied in. So I just think we should hammer down what these things are or are not, so that, they can just be administered properly is all.
yeah, and I was trying to remember that process of that, if I created it and asked if you three wanted to be on it, or if I like formally appointed.
I have no idea.
I believe it says in the, code about advisory groups, and this one, Ian, you actually titled it council work group creation.
That's what I was
Yes,
calling it,
I
but I don't know, then you called it a work group, so I'm just saying I'm just saying we should figure out which one it is.
Yeah.
So that we know.
Sure.
You can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, that could be something that the group, who might turn into a committee, could discuss, I suppose. I mean, it would be short term, you know, it would be a couple meetings, you decide the policy, and then kind of cease to, unless we would turn it into something different, but then that would be a different process. But yeah, why don't you three meet, give me some feedback, and then, we'll go from there.
Okay.
Back, Danny?
So Ian, you'll contact Roxy and I and set a time and a place.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Am I still going to that?
Well, I guess you do have a sample policy.
Yeah. You just said council those, contact
Well,
those, two, so I got confused.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I guess
Stacy at
Heidi and
also.
Stacy will be there too then.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, we need that.
Yeah, you can use Stacy.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, so moving on, we've got city manager report.
My report is included in your packet. Let me get to the page. I don't know, having that page at this point. Is there any questions on my report?
There was an update on the Hyder building.
Yeah, that's what my question was about the higher building.
I
So
think
what,
the mayor is best to get that report.
Yeah, go ahead. You go
will
ahead,
you just explain it, what's going on with it? It sounds kind of confusing.
yeah, so there was open for an auction, there was a winning bid. And then after that process, it was discovered that the liens on the property, were higher than what the winning bid was for. Which means they weren't able to pay the liens off, which means now it has to go into foreclosure. I believe they're still trying to engage the winning bidder to be the buyer, but it sounds like he could back out. I don't know if he's like contractually obligated to purchase it now since it is under foreclosure.
Yeah.
And then we also aren't sure about the Main Street, Oregon grant that was attached to that building. It sounds like, they would have to reapply.
Like, go through the whole process all over again.
I don't know about the whole process, but basically that money would expire for them December 31, and they would have to reapply. The new owner would have to reapply. So, not great news for that building, but we'll see if the buyer is interested. Although it sounded like that grant was a big selling point, and if they're losing that, then yeah. So, okay, Jim.
I'm gonna switch subjects, I'm just going through the report. So we have a transportation growth management grant for $200,000 that we need the state to approve what we want to do, is that correct?
I can't really understand what you're saying.
I'll say it again. We have a transportation growth management, grant, but we have to, submit a draft to the state, in order for that to go forward, is that what I'm reading here?
Yeah, the state is the funder.
Okay, and then the second one, the Yamhill Street CDBG update 440,000, and we don't have that yet, is that right? We're trying to put in a new application, is that?
You're still talking about, you're now talking, you switched, right? You're talking
Yeah,
about the Yamhill Street one?
Yeah.
Yes, so we did get that one.
Okay, we did get that.
That's for additional engineering work for
Yeah,
Keller.
and that's
for Keller.
CDBG, yeah, and that cost is just for the engineering, it's not actually any.
That's in addition to the CDBG grant that we had. And so there needs to be more environmental work that needs to be done. And so that price tag went up, so the COG was really gracious in helping to get more funding to make up for the difference in engineering, and we were awarded the 440,000. And Laura at the COG worked really hard to get that money. She did a good job.
Okay, so we have money and it's here, that we just gotta figure out the right way to use it, is that the best way to think of that?
I think it's just gonna be used.
Back to the transportation one, is what you're switching?
No, I
Well,
think.
both of those, I mean, we got a $20,000 grant for transportation growth management, and we got $440,000 for the Yamhill Street CDBG. So we still need to do a little bit more before we spend it, or can we just go ahead?
No, it's being spent, so the CDBG is, I don't even know how much we got for the CDBG, but that 440,000 is in addition to that CDBG. So that's all just trying to get all the engineering done for that project. And it's just gonna be paying for engineering services, which are ongoing.
Horrible prices.
The original amount on the CDBG for the sewer was $1,043,940.
So it's gonna be like, almost like 2 million, almost 2 million in engineering costs. We haven't even dug anything.
Jeez. It's a huge, giant process. It's been going on since before I came here.
Yep. Okay, Roxy?
And it will continue to take a long time.
Will the 200,000 that we got be enough to cover the transportation plan?
It better be, it should be, yeah. But there's a lot of staff work that doesn't get accounted for, but that's Liam's project. And we, the city, shouldn't have too many extra costs, I would say, associated with it, but it will take quite a bit of time for the city manager and for a city recorder to do, and others to weigh in. I will definitely be involved in that process.
Isn't this our oldest master plan? I mean,
I think it could be. My favorite one of the version that I saw was from 1999.
Yeah. Okay, I just wanna make sure that we had enough.
That is a very,
Cover that.
and it's a very, very competitive. Liam at the COG did a great job. He was very excited to get that money. It's extremely competitive. Jim Jocks has been trying for years to get that money. And so Liam put together a great project, and we reviewed it, and staff reviewed it, I reviewed it, and was able to help him with that too. So it feels really good to get that.
Yeah, have to thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll be engaged in all sorts of conversations that are like solar street signs, but how fast you want people to go.
The transportation plan might involve the street signs, even.
I'm just saying, like,
I mean,
you're
it
gonna
could.
end up
That makes
into
sense.
really nitty gritty conversations.
Well, if we buy the kind of boom, then I would work out.
You're gonna end up in conversations and learning a lot about transportation in the next couple of years.
All right, Liz.
I answered it in my head.
Okay.
You'll be also not just thinking about cars, but you'll be thinking about pedestrians.
Bikes.
And how you want them to move in your city and to connect different portions of the city.
Okay.
That's really fun stuff.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, right? Okay. Right, second comment period, do we get anything?
I do not have any.
All right. All right, mayor council comments. Let's try and get out of here if I can.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I'll go around and just call on everybody, just see what they wanna share. Danny, you can go first.
I got a couple things on 10/7/24. On 10/7/24, I was inquiring about the Orchard Street farmland, and I hadn't seen a contract, and I hadn't seen any revenue from that. And Heidi said she would send me over a copy of that contract. So I waited several weeks. A couple times it was brought up by Buckles if I'd received any information that I'd asked for. I said no. So I asked Tyler for a copy of the lease. And he sent me a copy, but it was a blank lease. It wasn't dated, it wasn't signed, it was just the lease. So I got back to him and said, could you give me a copy of the signed lease? And he said, I got you. I know what you mean now. So I waited a little bit and we got in touch with each other and he told me there was no signed lease. It wasn't a lease. So there was no lease and there was no payment. And the gentleman's been farming since a year ago. Now, he's already planted a crop again with no lease. And we're sitting here wondering what's going on. I think the council should have been kept up to speed on that.
Yeah, so what I found out is, we have been paid for the lease. It sounds like, as far as the payment date that was negotiated, I guess, with, city staff, they requested being able to pay after harvest. And then as far as the signed contract, it was explained to me by Tyler that, although a signed contract would be preferred, the act of engaging on a lease is the form of a contract, even though it's not signed in a traditional way, so they're still bound by that contract, even if they didn't actually sign it, since they engaged with, us and, leasing it. And then as far as what they're currently doing, that's on them. If they don't get the new bid, they're out money, that's on them. Go ahead.
So, yeah, okay. So the rules changed from leaser to leaser, sounds like to me. Which, I don't know, the whole thing's been pretty haywire since it started.
Yeah, my goal is to make this next one, cleaner. So yeah, that'll be, a goal going forward.
And also, as of today, it looked like the taxes hadn't been paid on the land. That's what's on the assessors. Okay, I'll just say that's what's on the assessor site.
Yeah, lots of information.
Thank you.
Okay, Lucy, do you have anything?
Councilor McElroy, you're always welcome to come and talk to me beforehand. I have lots of the information you need.
I would just want to know if the council would be interested in kind of looking over city planner fees, businesses, subdivision versus a domestic little family.
Okay. Is there any interest? Say that again.
The fees are straight across, reminds me of FEMA. You remind me of that when he's talking tonight. They charge straight across the board, and development charges are the same way. If Liz wanted to build a house in her backyard, I'd hate to see her go through what you have to go through when they're doing a subdivision. And, this $90 an hour, and, into the second hour, the first thing you hear is, and that's gonna be another $90. I mean, I wouldn't wanna do anything here. And our community is different than a business who's putting in a 140 unit subdivision. I understand it. I even mentioned it, but it was for the big developers that were taking hours with Jim Jacks, and the city back then decided they'd pay for that fee to bring in their associates. And somebody who's just building a house, they're not bringing associates in, they just wanna build a little house for themselves. And I think that should be looked at different from the city, because it's like commercial or residential, you know what I mean? But not when they're building, because they wanna build in a residential, but I meant a single family resident type person for their own, Liz wants to build a house in her backyard. I don't think she goes to that, if she has questions, as soon as you're over that first hour, and then you start accumulating more fees, and I'm sure first time purchaser, builder might wanna ask questions, I certainly would. Like I'd be fined for asking too many questions, and that kind of defeats the whole purpose of, building for a new family. Or somebody who's just building it for their family.
Well, and especially if we're gonna be adding extra hoops for more floodplain stuff.
And then you go with that, and people say, geez, I got into that second hour, he said, I'm gonna charge them $90. I walked out. I thought, I probably would too.
Yeah, we can look at that. Is anybody else interested in having that be a discussion topic, maybe work session? Okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Jim? Nothing. Okay, Roxy?
Has Sheridan
turned in the legislative water investment survey yet? It's
Not all the way done.
okay, 15th is deadline, okay. Are we gonna be able to do that?
I think so, yeah.
Okay,
We should be.
important. Thank you.
Liz,
That's all I have. All right, you guys, bear with me. A couple things I'm very concerned about. One of them is the lack of following the council rules of procedure, and another one is about media. So I'm just gonna read this. In the council rules of procedure, page 4 on agendas, it says agendas and informational material for meetings shall be distributed to the council at least 3 days preceding the meeting. And I'm assuming that means even the counselors are handing out materials too. And Counselor McElroy violated this when he handed out Toyota truck materials during a meeting on October 21st, and then proceeded to question Heidi about expenditures when she hadn't even had time to examine the materials. After that meeting, I wrote a letter to all the council, the city manager and the mayor, and requesting that questions from the packet and materials be sent prior to our meetings to respect everyone's time and also to follow the council rules of procedure. And then E in agendas is a member of council who wishes to have an item placed on the agenda shall advise the city manager at least 1 week prior to the meeting. During the November 4th special session, Councilor McElroy handed out a packet regarding driving costs and Lowe's purchases versus local purchases, which met the 1 week prior rule. However, he did not give Heidi nor Yvonne a copy to include in the next packet. Rather, he gave a copy to Joe Neely, who published it online that night before the council had a chance to review it or just discuss it. And so I really think we definitely need to devise or create a news media policy, as I am really not comfortable with pending council issues reaching the streets before we've had a chance to review them. And that's what's been going on. Stuff has been hitting the Facebook pages. So likewise, on November 13th, Joe published a city receipt from Professional Tires and Mac from an anonymous source, which was obviously someone in this room who had been requesting receipts, thus soliciting feedback on city expenditures. This was published prior to council seeing receipt and discussing receipt in executive session. Basically, the online publication of this anonymous receipt was intended to stir up more controversy for the city, which also violates council rules of procedures, chapter 8, 1C, conducting themselves in a manner to discredit, to bring discredit upon the government of the city. By publishing something prior to us even discussing it in executive session and soliciting feedback on the expenditures definitely is bringing a discredit upon the city. Lastly, both handouts we received from Councilor McElroy were unauthored, possibly leading public to believe they are coming from council rather than being Denny's, Councilor McElroy's personal opinion. I'm not comfortable with him speaking for all of us. In chapter 8, ethics, decorum, and outside statements, it says making a public statement as a council member that is contrary to the official position of the city without explaining that statement is an opinion of the individual member. Conducting themselves in a manner as to bring discredit upon, and it also is you're conducting yourself in a manner as to bring discredit upon the government of the city. When you publish something anonymously and then ask for feedback on the expenditures, you are discredited, bringing discredit to the city. If a member of council, let's see, I lost my place here. Anyway, so I think you understand where I'm going with this. I'm not going to read all of this out of the council rules of procedure, but I have grave concerns about Joe Neely being in our executive sessions, as he has already demonstrated a lack of journalistic judgment on 3 separate occasions where he has published videos and materials online prior to council review or discussion. On October 1st or 2nd, he published a video of the FBI in the library. Okay, I won't say that, Jose, but that was indiscretion.
On November 4th, at the end of our special session, Councilor McElroy handed out a packet about driving costs and Lowe's purchases and said as he handed it out that it was for the next meeting, which met the 1 week prior rule. Yet he did not give Yvonne or Heidi that packet, but gave one to Joe, who published it immediately online that evening before the council had a chance to review it. On November 17th, Joe published anonymously the receipt which came up, the receipt which came up in discussion the next day in our executive session. As I stated earlier, this is a disservice and discredits the government of the city. Based on these reasons, I propose that we formally establish a media policy and put it on an upcoming agenda. Are there any other councilors who would like to have a media policy adopted?
Okay. Well, let's put it on the agenda and see what happens. Okay. 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 We can go back. Denny.
So I don't participate in Facebook, and something you do have to know, that all invoices are public information. So however a person gets it, it's public information. That's all I got to say.
My concern was the invoice that was published was a big part of our discussion in executive session the next day.
It was still public information.
And it was soliciting comments on expenditures.
Okay. All right, Ian.
It's the third time she's spoken about an executive session in a public meeting and the subject of it. I would like to point out that chapter 8, section C, which you quoted, is, you said 3C?
Chapter 8, C and D, 1, C and D.
1 C and D? Okay, I'll read that better. But I would point out that those things that Denny handed out was during the council and consultants comment period and was not on the agenda.
Great. Ian, you got anything else? All right. Unless there's anything else, we can adjourn. Oh, Yvonne, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just make an announcement that Omega has worked really hard on making it so we can put our videos of our meetings on our website now. So when you go to our meetings page for each meeting, it now has the audio recording, but it also has a link for the video recording. So it's exactly what you're hearing here through the microphones, unedited. It's City Council Sheridan Raw, so. And it also runs the captions below it.
Oh. Right, Denny?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on the invoices for the mechanical shops that do work on our fleet. We got a list of a whole bunch of vendors, and some of them are mechanical shops, and that's not what I asked for. We went through about a 45-minute discussion on that, to get 7 hours of time to gather these. Whatever mechanical shops that do work on our fleet.
Yeah, that's Tyler.
It's out?
Yeah, he's working on it. I thought.
Yes, he has all of it.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you very much on that.
Yeah.
One more.
Oh, okay.
Tara was here tonight. That's like her third attempt to get some help. And I know I've seen her in tears. She just doesn't know what to do. And I would hope that somebody would give her some guidance. I don't know.
Yeah,
I can respond to that. I'm gonna give her some guidance here real soon.
That's pretty nasty.
No, not really, because I got information for that she asked. That's kind of rude that
Well,
you make such a.
Your attitude is pretty nasty.
Oh, is it? I think
All
I'm
right.
pretty nasty anyway.
I'd like someone to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second.
Whoever's second. All right, can we vote? All in favor?
Yeah.
All right, let's go.
10:02.
Yeah, let's go.
Recording stops.